Hey everybody, great to see people joining here. We'll give it maybe just another 60, 120 seconds, a few more people to jump into the Zoom here, and then I'll get you started with the intros. But thanks everyone for joining. Really pumped to host everyone here. And our goal today is to tell a really compelling story around how venture capital and Army funded startups can work together. So really thankful to have everyone join here for the discussion. We'll get started in just 60 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So nice to meet everyone today. I know we got a handful of people out on the live stream as well versus in our kind of interactive panel here. But nice to meet everyone. My name is Will Dixon. I'm a principal here at xTech and lead our accelerators portfolio. And I'll provide a few intro slides here before we get started with some of the keynote and hopefully provide some context for the day. So next slide, Gunnar. So a first clarifying thing is because everyone signed up through Eventbrite or through our calendar invite, we have your email addresses. If something happens, we'll try to get this one back up first. If you see it's totally dead, goes down for some reason, we'll email everybody a link to either a new Zoom or just a Google Hangouts meeting link to keep the show going. The show must go on here at xTech, so we don't let virtual meetings get in our way. So quick agenda overview here. So again, I'll do a quick intro of xTech and some of the background for today. We have some amazing kind of keynote speakers to start us off, and then a few awesome panel discussions before our finalist pitches. The xTech 4 finalists are within the xTech search competition here and are going to do some awesome pitching, and we have some great polling and opportunities for everyone to get involved here. Interactive versus staying non-interactive here. But again, our goal here today from the agenda is tell a really compelling, interesting, interactive story for how defense-funded and validated technology startups can work with venture capital and what are the trade-offs when you're engaging those two ecosystems. First, we have plenty of thank yous, of course, to our partners for the day. This is just a sample of all the amazing companies and firms represented here. I could call them out here, but again, we're happy to be the nexus here, but without everyone's participation, we really can't make a big impact. So next slide. Big thank you to the companies for participating. This is actually their third formal pitch event through the accelerator. They previously pitched a few different ecosystems, which we'll touch on. But again, huge thanks to all of them for participating here and having a really well, especially for this audience, a really well manicured venture-focused pitch. And then a big one, thank you here to the xTech search team. And I'll get into it in a minute exactly what the xTech search program is for those of you not familiar. But at the end of the day, this is not possible without the Army and the xTech search team stepping in to be the leaders in cultivating and helping these early stage deep tech breakthrough technology companies get initial traction, get that tech validated, find customers and partners within the Army and greater government. So huge thank you to the xTech team and our mentor network here who are in the trenches with us day in, day out, making the accelerator and the rest of the program possible. So a quick introduction on xTech. What are xTech? xTech, we are a venture builder. So think incubators, accelerators, startup studios. We do all of that stuff. And we sit at a very crucial intersection that is mission oriented. One, the DoD government mission. We work with federal labs, plenty of stakeholders within the government to help them achieve their mission, entrepreneurs and small businesses, and finally breakthrough technologies. So that's the one as a previous engineer, having been in that Boston ecosystem. And I think really interesting to the audience today, we only work with breakthrough technology companies. So insert deep tech, tough tech, hard tech, all that stuff. We feel that has really great potential to revolutionize a lot of these industries and use case spaces. We have kind of four major products, if you're a product person out there, four major products that we run here at xTech. Number one is our startup studios, and I'll get to it on the next slide, but we actually work with 40 plus federal labs, any sort of large research organization that has quote unquote IP or technology on the shelf that may not have been commercialized for whatever reason in the normal context of tech transfer. We actually build startup studios, recruit entrepreneurs, and empower them to go start really small companies with the non-linear entrepreneurship mechanism from those awesome technologies. Number two here is the custom accelerators. The xTech accelerator is our prime example of that we're really proud of working with the Army on. But this is to provide a way for startups not only to do the traditional accelerator stuff, access to venture capital, exposure events, pitch and communication coaching, but having come from a large organization in General Motors myself, the custom accelerators will really help try to provide some storytelling and context for how can a startup, really small company, engage a really, really large complex organization over the course of, it may be multiple years. But we're really proud of building these custom accelerator programs that are specific for different partners in really large organizations. And we feel that provides a unique differentiator compared to other accelerators. The last two here really stem from our expertise in being a venture builder, which, the one and two on the left there, internal innovation. So this is applying the lessons learned from entrepreneurship, really believe in that lean startup, customer discovery, non-scalable work type model to empower entrepreneurs. And we take that and apply that to program managers, people in large, mostly technology focused organizations across the US. And finally, corporate venture. So a lot of that is translating what we do. A lot of these early stage technologies are a unique focal point into the DoD and greater federal lab space, translating that into measurable business opportunities for large corporates or venture capital firms. And again, this is just a sample of the federal labs and partners we've worked with. Huge kudos to our founder, Ben, starting the company back in 2015, and we've grown exponentially just over the course of the last year or so. But a few cool stories here. When you think about who can be an entrepreneur in the US, you see that NFL logo here. We've worked with some previous NFL and NBA alumni who've joined our programs as entrepreneurs to help commercialize these technologies, which is pretty neat. And then you see, really storied technical institutions like NASA, Los Alamos, the Army, all the Department of Energy labs, really proud to work and empower all these organizations to really make an impact with a lot of the technology that's developed by the best experts in the world. But let's get a little bit deeper into the background for today. So today, the background of our accelerator one is really on the backbone of an amazing program run out of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition Logistics Technology, Dr. Bruce Jetty's office, called the xTech Search Prize Competition. So to date, over $2 million in prizes per competition, over $7.5 million to date. They do an amazing job crowdsourcing the judging to all corners of the Army. So one of the things I say is if you're a startup up there, go bookmark xtechsearch.army.mil and apply to the next round, which hopefully be coming up here in a few months. But even if you don't make it forward, the judging process itself is a really focused customer discovery effort for the US Army, which is really difficult to architect for a large organization. And again, just highlighting there the amount of unique Army judges that have contributed. And again, it's across all the different archetypes and areas of the Army have been able to participate. A few uniquely xTech search differentiators. So again, we're in the middle of this ecosystem. We're very familiar with AFWorks, NavalX, DIU, all these things. So a few differentiators for xTech search for all the startups and even venture capitalists out there. The Army, it's open topic. So this is a really cool, I think, mindset that the Army has that, hey, maybe we don't know what requirements to write yet. So we're going to let anybody propose their ideas to us. Really, I think, mature lens for such a large organization. And then number two here, they're not just doing the prize competition, right? Even with the judges being that focused customer discovery, working with us here at FedTech to run the custom accelerator program, they're putting their arm around the startups to really incubate and accelerate them, not only from transitioning their tech into the Army, but just as general US small businesses. And then the last one, it is super founder and entrepreneur friendly because it awards the cash prizes very, very rapidly, connects you to Army stakeholders, and the accelerator takes no equity in what you do. So we are here really for those small businesses in the program here. So real quick, defining what an accelerator is, how we believe in it, a lot of different ways. It's a very sexy term thrown around a lot of ways here. But number one, it accelerates the growth of an established businesses. Number two, for us, again, filling in gaps of knowledge for founders working with the DoD in the case of the Army, but really any large organization where you require more education and context for transitioning technologies over time for the deep tech businesses. And then finally, once you've done the first two, let's double down our bets. Let's connect them to all the relevant stakeholders that can leverage here. So getting into the xTech Accelerator, we build it on 5 core pillars here. For me, this is the chapters in the book that we write all the pages day in, day out, okay? So we got the educational programming, which I'm a big believer in, the diverse mentorship. So if anyone out there would love to be a mentor for some of these really cool deep tech startups, let us know. Go to fedtech.io/accelerators. There's a place to share your information. But we believe in not just getting a mentor from the Army, not just from the VC world. Our mentors are from national institutions, really crossing in all different flavors of US early stage economic development. Venture building consulting, this is leveraging experts in a field to help the companies. Strategic exposure, of which we'll touch on, that today is part of that is strategic exposure. And then finally, the community building, and really proud and huge thanks to all of our founders we just had a great roundtable yesterday. But even in this virtual world where, thinking, it's probably difficult to get to trust people just over webcams, a huge kudos to our founders here for buying into that belief and participating, really heavily in these inter-cohort, assistance opportunities. So to finish it out here, the strategic exposure, we believe there's 3 primary stakeholders that are important to be exposed to and understand how to work with for our tough tech startups. Number 1 in the DoD is that defense partners ecosystem. So perfect example of this, if you have this awesome antenna, but it's got to go in a tank, probably not going to disrupt the tank industry. So you need to understand how to work with the defense partners, how they can be integrators, how they can be enabling you either through mentorship or really non-financial resources. Number 2 here is we'll say Washington, D.C., but really the Army internal ecosystem of customers and partners. And so we do this a lot through educational opportunities. There's all these different acronyms, CRADAs, BAAs, SIBRs, sitters, all these different funding and partnership opportunities. We demystify the Army through teaching them about that, but also connecting deep into the Army for customers, right? So once you've been validated through our program, we'll get you in front of the right customers and let you do some customer discovery. And then finally, and a huge thanks to everyone here today, the U.S. venture capital ecosystem. So traditionally, we would have done this. We partnered with the Engine last time. Huge thanks to them. MIT's the Engine, great tough tech ecosystem node up in Boston, but really engaging the venture capital, which is a financially motivated partner for a lot of our startups. But we believe these 3 are the biggest ones. And so we try to contextualize them, build the archetypes, and teach our companies how to work with them, and then expose them to the 3 different ecosystems. A few quantitative highlights from our accelerator before we turn it over here to Paula, who's going to be our MC for most of the evening. But really proud of our first accelerator we ran for the xTech 3 cohort, which completed last March. But really believing this customer discovery centric model of acceleration, look at the DoD contracts applied for, how many millions of dollars got awarded, even during the accelerator. So this is an older version, but we continually update these metrics because DoD contracts, they do take a long time. So even if we do our best job demystifying, connecting, it could be 6, 12, 18 months before you really catch fire. And then you see the last one there, really proud of the partner engagement, because again, in the tough tech, deep tech ecosystem, a lot of times it's not enough just to get billions of dollars of venture funding to accelerate. You do need partners on your journey to make it more efficient, make sure you can translate that technology quick enough to make a real impact. So before we get started here, ways to get involved. This is a QR code. Any company, I encourage everyone just to bring it up on your phone right now. So any company you see, and you can always just email myself or Gunnar Gillespie here, who is an awesome partner on our team. You can always email us, but please, if you want to get involved, this is the engineered networking for us. Scan the QR code, let us know who you want to talk to. Let's make it happen. Maybe you lean a little bit further in than you would even at an in-person networking event. And then, like I said, mentor in the future. We love to engage diverse perspectives, always interested in building our community of FedTech experts and mentors. So please connect with us online. So with that, before we introduce Dave, actually, I'd like to introduce Paula Anzer from our FedTech team. She has an amazing storied background with the MIT Media Lab, really present in a super connector. I love, she says her superpower is being a super connector for startups in that Boston tough tech ecosystem. So really valued member of our team here. And I'm going to pass over to her to introduce Dave and kind of get us started with some of the formal programming for today.
Okay, thank you, Will. I'm a huge fan of technology and innovation and the ecosystems that support them. So I'm really thrilled to be here today and welcome to you all. It is really a privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Dave Harden, CEO of The Outpost, a dual-use ecosystem. And I have to say that anytime I see the good, the bad, and the ugly in a title, it piques my curiosity. So Dave's title today is Dual Use Tech Investing, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So Dave Harden is the CEO of The Outpost and is a colonel in the Air Force Reserve. Prior to founding The Outpost, he was the COO and chief architect for AFWorks, which is the Air Force's technology accelerator for innovators, academia, and businesses to solve national security problems. Prior to AFWorks, he was chief of strategic prioritization at the Pentagon, where he built and executed a framework for the Air Force to create better decision-making information for its 30-year multi-trillion-dollar strategic plan. Wow. He has a BS in electrical engineering from the US Air Force Academy, an MBA from George Washington University, and strategic and innovation certificates from the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia and MIT. Welcome, Colonel Dave Harden. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paula and Will. Clearly have to pay you guys more for great intros like that. I think very, very humbling. So surely appreciate that today. I guess, I wanted to welcome kind of everyone here. I know there's kind of a mix of folks on here. So, welcome to the xTech cohort, those that'll be pitching today. I know we have some VCs, corporate venture capital partners, and other folks. So just great to be a part of this ecosystem. Love talking to entrepreneurs, love talking to people that are passionate about the DoD innovation space. So super exciting. I wish it was face-to-face. I wish we got to shake hands, maybe have a coffee or a drink as it may be, but we're definitely in this weird 2020 as it is. So I was going to start today before starting AFWorks, which, Paula mentioned was the Air Force's innovation arm. And obviously we could share a ton of stories just around the creation of that. I did lots of business before that, consulting, speaking, a lot of stuff in the Fortune 100 kind of arena, if you will. One time my travels took me to South Africa. And in South Africa, I landed there actually in Johannesburg. And so I landed and I had a driver who's taking me to the hotel and his name was Livingston. And so Livingston, we start driving, down the road, and he actually started talking about apartheid. And given the current, racial tension we have today, you can appreciate also even back then the sensitivity of the conversations. And so, we kind of got through that conversation, if you will, and then he sprung me with this question. He said, "Mr. Dave, how do I make money?" Said, I want to make money. How do I make money? So I kind of paused for a little bit and I said, well, Livingston, I said, we're driving down this road. You're probably going down this road 1,000 times. They said, yes, I have. And we said, well, look at this lamp, look at this lamp. If someone has a contract, maybe even with the government for the purposes of today's conversation, has a contract for all these lamps going down here and they're making money off of it. And he said, okay. I said, well, you have to be a person that people want to do business with, right? You got to be able to connect with them. And then you have to have an idea that you're passionate about and figure out how to get after it, So we kind of had this exchange. And I remember pulling up into the hotel. So it was kind of a roundabout. We didn't talk for the last portion. And so I pull in and I'm just getting ready to go out. And he said, Mr. Dave, I have an idea. And it turns out that he grew up in the same village as Nelson Mandela. And he said, Mr. Dave, he goes, my village is kind of poor. He goes, I've always dreamed of planting plants. He goes, I want to create vegetation. I want to create something in our village that makes a difference. Well, ironically enough, I had literally just met a guy 3 months ago, and his goal was to plant like 1 million trees worldwide, right? So we walk in, I'm actually at the check-in. He comes in with me. I jump on the phone with this guy. We make a call. He's like, yes. He goes, we'll be able to do this, this, and this, and we're going to set up, and we're going to get some planning done in Livingston's village. And so I get off the call, and then at this point, I'm sitting kind of on a couch and across from Livingston. And this is a guy literally I just met, maybe 30, 45 minutes ago. And he just starts bawling, right? He's just crying. So I have this grown man crying across from me. And he's like, Mr. Dave, he goes, I always thought I'd be a taxi cab driver the rest of my life. He said, now for the first time, I realized taking this idea, I can be something different moving forward. And so that experience really changed me because for me, it was the spirit of the human creativity engine, right? The ability to go out there and be able to make a difference with your idea really gets me passionate about what entrepreneurs can do. And we've seen a bunch of articles. We've seen, the Googles and the Microsofts and petitions. Hey, we don't want to work with the DoD. We don't want to do this government stuff. But reality, if you look at the majority of people out there, entrepreneurs want to do good things. They want to be at the intersection of DoD and government. Now, traditionally, what we've seen is that investment hasn't always been there. People are really scared of kind of investing in what we now call today the dual use tech investment thesis. And so how are we doing so far in it? Well, that's where we open up on the good, the bad, and the ugly, Paula, right? So we'll talk about that here in a second. So I'll pull up, I guess I got a couple slides to kind of share with you guys. Nothing too intense for a 15-minute conversation here. But so I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And if you just give me 1 second, these are always obviously the conundrums of this. So Paula, Will, are we able to see my screen? Okay, great. So why invest in dual use tech? I think there's a couple reasons that at least I've found and have been passionate about it. You've seen some stuff like Founders Fund, right? They've made some bets in SpaceX, Palantir. There's a couple of the early, I don't say winners, but winners in the space. People point to maybe Anduril, co-founded by the Oculus, founder, Palmer Luckey, right? They raised over $200 million, kind of the first unicorn, right? $1 billion valuation. So those are some good things I think to point to, right? There's some winners that aren't named Lockheed, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, and so I think those big primes, their business model is going to change over time, and that's because entrepreneurs, those passionate people with ideas, and the DoD that's decided to engage industry in a different way is changing that industry. And what we see is government contracts and the ability to have innovation in an uncertain environment, right? That's what we're in, whether it's COVID, the Chinese, the Russians, right? Whatever we want to talk about the landscape, that geopolitical environment that's uncertain, investing starts to make sense in something that's in the government, in the DoD space, right? And for me as an investor, I get to start to work with something else in this dual use tech thesis that I don't have as maybe a traditional VC. And that is timing, right? I get to play a little bit with timing. So what does that mean? I'll peel that back a little bit. As a traditional VC, I might have a great team. I might have a great product, right? But what if the market timing's off a little bit? Maybe I'm too early. Maybe I'm a little bit too late. I don't get a lot of control over that. What's interesting in the dual use tech thesis is we get to play with that timing a little bit, okay? For example, we had an augmented reality company. The market, right, in the commercial sector was going to take a little bit. We needed kind of Uber to have some, private helicopters flying around, right? We needed some other things to happen in the commercial marketplace, but the DoD was a great spot for early R&D, right? To get some of their prototypes done to show how there could be ROI in the DoD kind of context or thesis. So great. Now we go and we're able to get that young company, get their product further down and give the commercial market a little bit more time to mature. You're able to then even have perhaps 2 liquidation events, if you think about it as a company, right? You could have a mill IP kind of liquidation event, and you could have a commercial one later. The inverse is true sometimes as well, right? We find where the commercial markets, maybe in, multi-cloud environments, right? You see financial industry and banking and some of these other sectors really picking up a multi-cloud. The DoD is going to come along slower, right? So it starts to make sense. Hey, let's put a lot of our eggs in the commercial side, knowing that maybe it's going to take longer for the DoD market to mature, but we can still play it later. If you look at the graph I have up here later, the good news is all these forces coming together, we see an increase in what we call phase 3 funding. So everyone talks about the valley of death and hop in the valley of death. What does that mean? It means, can I get my thing further enough along? And what people talk about is a program of record. Can I get into a program of record? Well, what we're talking about here is a program of record equivalent. If you think about a phase 3, it's kind of a, it's a base plus 4-year contract. It's a 5-year contract. And technically you can keep raising the limit. So it's actually a limitless contract vehicle. That's a pretty good deal for companies. And so what we see here is really as this DoD innovation thing kind of spun off, you saw AFWorks, we were able to launch something called Spark Cells and tech accelerators with Techstars. You see DIU and InQtel and other innovation organizations kind of sprouting along. And so you see a corollary increase in value, right? You see, just in the last few years, over a 200% increase in reported phase 3 funding. You see more technology transitions occurring, because before maybe you did a phase 1, maybe you did a phase 2 in the cyber environment, but then it died off. You just couldn't get that traction. And so this is great, right? This is a great news story to say, hey, there's movement. There's hope for small business becoming programs or becoming multi-year contracts. That's really, really important, But with all good comes a little bad. And so I titled the bad, who moved my cheese, right? And so, yes, the US code says, 2377 says, hey, you gotta go look at commercial product before you look at government product. And then all these people said, hey, we gotta be more innovative. And you see, the OSD and the Air Force and everybody coming out, hey, if we don't change, we're gonna die. But this is the map of just the innovation ecosystem in the DoD. Holy moly, right? So now, we're asking these companies here pitching today, hey, go look at this, and this is how you're innovative in the DoD. Well, hell, that's not very helpful, right? And so just in great government fashion, we've taken the innovation industry and created its own process and sausage making that is as incomprehensible as the contracting process itself. And so now it's like, who the hell am I supposed to talk to make stuff work, right? And so that's bad, right? That's not good, okay? And so what we look at is, how are we now going to not be a distraction to these great companies that are on the call today? How are we not going to take them off course from their commercialization plan? And that's a balancing act, right? And so investors are looking at that, and sometimes they're throwing up their hands saying, hey, stay with the commercial market, right? We don't want you to go get distracted over here. And so I think it's incumbent upon, organizations like FedTech, like what we do at the Outpost, to say, hey, what's that balance between the product that will move the needle for the warfighter and the product that's going to continue to have commercial value? And that's not an easy balancing act, but you have to do it in this environment. So reach out to these organizations, find out, what their postings are, get involved with the innovation ecosystem. But fair warning, sometimes it's hard to say, who the hell moved my cheese? Now it's time for the ugly. And I made the ugly really, really simple. Okay. And you'll see this big block of ice. Okay. And so what's the ugly in this business? Well, the ugly is the frozen middle. And so this picture right here, you have a couple generals on top and they're chipping away because they're normally in their last tour. They want a legacy of success, right? And so now all of a sudden they want innovation. You have a bunch of airmen and soldiers at the bottom. They want to get their day-to-day mission done, right? And so they want innovation. Now, the problem is you have two different vocabularies just in this picture. The generals on top are talking about asymmetrical advantage in the war fighting, okay? That only happens in 1 in 1,000 of the innovations that we're bringing forward, even as a FedTech. Everybody down there wants to reduce the suck. So when they say, I want to have an innovation, they're trying to reduce the day-to-day arduous tasks that they have. Which ones make sense for you as an investor to invest in? It's a tough question, right? And the balance lies in what kind of ROI do we get? So there's a couple ugly stories here I'm going to have. One's very quick, and I was working with a company, and they're like, Dave, it was super frustrating. We were subcontracting. We had $7 million of business with a user, but we didn't really have the direct contact with the contractor. We didn't have direct contact with the end user, right? We didn't have a direct contact even with the prime in some cases. So we're doing this work, and one day it literally just disappeared. It just dried up, right? And so as an investor, I'm like, holy crap, I just made this investment in the company. Things are going great. We have $7 million of revenue, disappears. If I'm a VC or I'm a corporate venture partner and I made that investment, I'm never going to invest again, right? In a company. So we've really tried to democratize contracting, right? That's been the purpose of some of the fast track SBIR programs that you see, the OTs, some of the DIU processes, right? To get involved with, how do we break down these barriers so that you can actually get the ROI that you want to achieve? There's also concerns today, even in a Palantir example, right? If I look at how they break out their reported earnings, what you're going to see is a disproportionate amount in sales, right? Because a lot of the function of primes, they have the luxury to say, hey, we have this, what's called a IRAD, right? An innovation, research, and development. They're able to take that line item and not show it as sales. But a commercial company, a Silicon Valley company, they're going to show this exorbitant number of sales because it takes so long to get through the procurement process in the government. And so investors look at that and they say, hey, I'm not getting the ROI I want. I want to do something different. And so we run into people and the iceberg that says, hey, we're not going to change what we're doing. We're not going to do something different. And you have to go in eyes wide open, because that's the ugly part. It's the ugly part of doing business in the DoD. The good news is, though, I think we can overcome what my fear is. My fear is we have too many failures. This first class, like you, aren't successful. The Palantirs, Andurils aren't successful. Because if that happens, then we're going to see the investment pool shrink. We're going to see VCs not want to invest. But the good news is, I believe strongly that each of you can be a Livingston. Each of you can say, hey, I'm going to take my passion and I want to be at the intersection of national security and commercial. We know that there's patriotic money out there. Some of them you're going to hear this afternoon in some of the sessions, right? That believe there's good avenues in government, that we can get you to a phase 3. We can get you to a program of record and really help transition you to success. So with that, I challenge each of you today to tap into your spirit. It's an ugly business. Help us be one of these chippers like Will and Paula and the FedTech team. Break down the iceberg and hopefully get success not only for your companies, but for our war fighters who fight every day and for our national security interests. So with that, Paula, Will, thank you so much for the time today, and hopefully I was able to at least share some valuable stories.
Fantastic. Dave, thank you so much for sharing your stories and wisdom with us. We could spend many coffees and have many glasses of beer to continue and to hear more. Thank you. That was an incredibly inspiring way to kick off the event. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive in the DoD ecosystem, and our next speaker is Charlene Stokes, and she is the ARL HRED Research and Innovation Lead from the U.S. Army CCDC ARL Northeast. I love all of the acronyms. Okay, all right. Let me tell you a little bit about Charlene. Dr. Charlene Stokes is the Army Research Lab Human Research and Effectiveness Directorate's lead for human-centered research and innovation in the Northeast region, operating out of the ARL Open Campus in the Northeast and serving as the Deputy Program Manager of STRONG. She completed a dual focus PhD in industrial, organizational, and human factor psychology at Wright State University. She has over 14 years of experience as a defense researcher and program manager, working to push the boundaries of DoD innovation, particularly in the area of human agent teaming and artificial intelligence. She has many more impressive accomplishments, which I'm not going to mention right now because I want you to hear from her directly, but I will finish by saying she is a passionate advocate for cross-service collaboration and open innovation communities. So a perfect speaker for this topic of Army DoD perspective on the VC startup ecosystem. Welcome, Dr. Charlene Stokes.
Thank you so much, Paula. Hopefully everyone can hear, and fair warning, I am in my house with my children and they have promised me they're going to be good, but they are 7 and 10. So we'll see how that goes. Again, just thanks so much. I really enjoy being a part of this. And again, interacting within this ecosystem and hearing Dave's keynote as well, and working with Will and Zeke over this last year since joining the Army. It's just, again, I think we're stronger the more we work together and the more we connect as an overall ecosystem and engaging the entrepreneurs that we're all interested in, and that can help our military service, obviously, but the national industrial base for overall as well. So what I want to do is dive a little deeper, as Paula said. So all of the tremendous activity, and I absolutely love that graphic from Dave. I'm going to have to get that from you for sure. Many of us have been talking about doing that, and just to see it finally done was just, yeah, it's just so much, so overwhelming. And again, to Dave's point, that it's just too much, right? So it's too much for any companies to take on. It's too much for so many other people to try to take on. So what we're doing as getting into this game relatively new for ARL Northeast, which is only about 2 years old, and I just joined this last year. So we have a lot of flexibility where we can kind of take that step back and look at things and okay, so what are the great lessons learned, what paths have been paved, and what new direction, where can we plug in and hopefully bring something of complementary value to that. So where we've decided to focus on as ARL Northeast is starting to work in lockstep with the VC community, not just, partnering and doing different things on one-offs are great, and we still want to keep those happening, but where can we establish a more structure to how we go about engaging some of these communities? And so we're really pleased. We're drafting up a concept now. We're getting a lot of buy-in throughout Army leadership. We're getting a lot of buy-in and direct support from the VC community, and we are starting to circulate this idea. I'd love to get Dave's feedback, but also I want to get some of the startup community's feedback as well. And again, just try to, as we shape this new concept and this new business model for how we plan to plug in as ARL Northeast, we want to start to try to get as much feedback and again, those lessons learned as possible. So again, these kind of events are great learning lessons for me as well. But again, I will be reaching out, and please, if anyone has thoughts, pain points that you've experienced, things you'd like to change, because we are in the middle of creating this and what it can look like. We would really value that feedback. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Charlene Stokes, ARL, Army Research Lab. Please do reach out, because again, we want to take the opportunity to at least do what we can right from the beginning. And again, we're fortunate to have so many great examples that have gone before us and really paved the road. So again, the two unique aspects I'll say that we are kind of narrowing in on our model for a DoD VC partnership, and how we engage and interact with some of these companies, working in lockstep through advisory boards and different aspects. Lots of details to come. But again, what we want to do is start focusing earlier on. So not only working directly with the VCs and shaping what we're going after through portfolios together, but we also want to start as early as we possibly can with the tough tech community. I'm a 6-1 for familiar basic researcher. I've been a 6-1, 6-2 researcher and program manager for, again, 14 years, as Paul had mentioned. And so where can we start engaging in that space as early as we possibly can, not only to, again, pull in, of course, acquisition, and on the acquisition side, acquire the higher, more advanced technologies, or TRL, technology readiness levels, targeting some of those higher ones. But we already have so many great shops that are doing that, like DIU, like AFWorks, like a lot. Where can what we hope to be able to step in and add value to this overall community is, where can we start doing it at the most earliest levels, at the 6-1, 6-2 levels, which is the fundamental research that's typically coming out of universities. So what we are looking at doing is not only partnering with our higher TRL innovation groups that are acquiring some of these great technologies and quickly transitioning them to the warfighter, but where can we, as a program manager, for example, supply seed funding to some of this fundamental research that's coming up that either can quickly transition then, and we have some great examples. Rob Jensen out of ARL had a great example with PPG, and again, just going from, I think it was a TRL 1 to full production within PPG within a matter of 2 years. Again, just phenomenal story there. Other options are, where can 6-1 researchers such as myself or other folks that we work with and program managers that we're investing in this cutting edge science and technology, where can we partner with some cutting edge technology that's being developed in the entrepreneur community? So again, either spinning off, kind of two paths we're looking at to help facilitate, can these, academic researchers, government researchers, anyone else that's interested, can we spin off a company and get that going? Or can we use some of the science and technology powerhouse that is the government and the DoD in particular in some of these areas, such as human machine teaming, to add value to some of those technologies that are being developed by those entrepreneurs? I'll just highlight a great example. And again, for any other entrepreneurs that are out there listening today, my particular area, and again, what we're exploring at ARL Northeast Open Campus, which is a much larger, covering all of ARL, all of the different S&T areas. My particular area, though, just for an example, is focused again on that human machine teaming. So all of these fundamental, just great technologies are being produced and again, growing exponentially in what's being put out there. But where do the human sciences come in with some of that? And again, because that is my background, I was fortunate enough to be able to partner with a startup company themselves called American Robotics, an agricultural drone company. And they were looking at, again, trying to fully automate the farm of the future. And then when I, from the military perspective, came in and I was like, well, that's human machine teaming. Where can I try to help understand some of the trust in those systems that those farmers are having? Because again, the farmers are people. That's a fundamental human scientific question about trust in autonomous systems and trust in AI and the social dynamics that are elicited. So again, that's just one example, just a personal example that I have had and had success in that area where, again, science and technology, where we can buy down the risk, if you will, of some of those technologies by asking and researching and doing that and investing our money on our side on some of those more fundamental questions that maybe the VC community, apologize for my son yelling, that maybe the VC community is obviously needs to focus on getting that prototype going, but where can we partner in these unique ways? And I would say, again, that's the fundamental difference, two fundamental differences that we're trying to do at ARL Northeast is start at the earliest possible level we can, look for collaboration opportunities in addition to spin out opportunities. And again, starting that from the beginning, working in lockstep with some VC partners. So again, please, I'm really looking at this and trying to do as many speaking events as I can to get this word out there, because I want your feedback. I want to make sure we are thinking of lessons learned, you know, coming at this as a community. And as Paula mentioned, I am absolutely an advocate for cross-service collaboration. I was with the Air Force for 12 years prior, a small stint with MITRE, which was great, got to cover lots of different services. And then now just recently, as I mentioned in the past year, joining the Army. And we really have to do this together. So the more feedback you're willing to give me, I will take it. Please, please do reach out. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Charlene, so much for joining us. And it's really great to hear all those possibilities for collaboration and partnership. And yeah, really inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're well. Thank you.
You mentioned VCs, and that is a great segue into the next part of our program, which is going to be a panel presentation by a really, really wonderful group of VCs, and we really appreciate them taking the time today to come talk with us. And what I'm going to do is introduce you to the moderator, and then he will introduce you to the VCs on the panel. And we have kind of informally name this panel "When and Why to Seek VC Funding and How to Nail the Pitch," kind of what ideas VCs have for early stage startups who are thinking about venture capital. Okay, so the moderator of this panel is Tommy Luganbill, and he is the director of Techport, which is a business incubator in Southern Maryland. And as director, Tommy connects entrepreneurs with the resources they need to turn their dreams into reality, whether it is through strategic advising or helping connect to expanded funding opportunities. He helps innovators focus on both the defense and commercial applications of their product. He also wants Techport, which is located adjacent to the St. Mary's County Airport and a key component of the St. Mary's County Innovation District, to help larger corporations identify and link with the engaging new ideas of these creative small businesses and entrepreneurial thinkers. Tommy received a bachelor's degree in corporate finance from the Lerner School of Business at the University of Delaware, an MBA from the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland, and is currently completing a doctorate in business administration at Florida Institute of Technology. Tommy, you are in a perfect position to moderate a conversation among venture capitalists, and I turn the mic over to you to introduce this great panel.
Sure. I appreciate you guys letting me moderate today. Just quick background. I've had a front row seat to watching FedTech grow. You mentioned that I went back to school at the University of Maryland. When I was there, there was a brand new class, first time ever. It's called FedTech. And Ben Solomon, he taught the class the very first time. I was actually one of his students. So for me to see it go from a 3-credit class as an MBA student to where it is today, it's pretty astonishing. And having folks from AFWorks, NSIN, and FedTech kind of all be a part of this, it's very valuable. So all the entrepreneurs that are in this accelerator, I've had the opportunity to also see that grow from xTech, and the network has gotten so much bigger. The things that are going on are great, and I would really take advantage of everything that this program does. And I can thank you guys for putting me down this rabbit hole, which has been quite the ride between the federal world and the DoD and the private sector. But anyway, that's enough about me. We do have a great panel today, and we are limited on time. So I'm going to cut my introduction short. And what I want to do basically is kind of just throw out some questions to the individuals that are on the panel and let them briefly tell you who they are, and then maybe answer the question. And then that way we can fit everything in. And again, oh, there I am, sorry. Again, for me, I think the thing to do the most today is try to demystify the venture capital process. I remember starting out as an entrepreneur, there were a lot of assumptions that I had. There were a lot of times where I thought maybe, the venture capital wasn't being nice or wasn't paying attention to me. But the reality is that it's just understanding the way that the business works. So for starters, I want to kick it off with a question to a VC on this panel, but also someone who's been a friend of mine for about 10 years. That's Bill Collier. And, just generally speaking, Bill, you work at TEDCO. What are the things that you're thinking about doing or investing with early stage companies? Like when you're talking to these people, red flags or things that you look for that are positives. What are those key differentiators that you try to find?
Good question, Tommy, and good to see you, bud. What I look for when I engage with early stage companies are founders and executive teams that are coachable. And I use that term a lot, but I think for today's group, I think what's more applicable is maybe the term might be flexible, right? I want to work with companies that really understand their strengths and their weaknesses and that are open to getting feedback, receiving that feedback, and maybe pivoting, tweaking their model a little bit. That might be open to, introductions to other advisors who've done it before that might be able to help in some of those gaps and areas that a company might be weak in, right? But if someone's not open to that feedback and isn't open and flexible at all, to me, it's difficult to work with those closed-minded founders.
So, Oren, I'm going to kick it over to you. I like what Bill said about being able to work with teams and open-minded. A topic that came up in a couple of the presenters before this, and Oren, I think you've got a background with speaking to this. When working with dual-use technologies, how do you give a company advice when maybe the two industries are different? There's a private sector and then there's the federal sector. Are there ways to marry the two industries as far as you see, Oren?
Wow. Yeah. I'll try to keep this brief because I could go on for hours on that question. I love the good, the bad, and the ugly framing because I feel exactly the same way, having lived through it for 20 odd years now. I'll just summarize my kind of good, bad, and ugly in a few statements. We, the engine, and I think the tough tech community are by nature dual use, but to me, and I think a lot of VCs share this opinion, to be dual use, that is to have the DoD as both a non-dilutive research and development supporter, as well as an end customer, and to be commercially successful, you have to be commercially successful. That has to be your top priority. That has to be your singular focus. You have to have a path to commercial success that does not include the federal government. And then the federal government can come in profoundly disruptive ways that can be incredibly beneficial and can launch you into exponential growth. But the federal government is fundamentally not a reliable source of funding until the contract is signed. Timing, congressional delays, politics, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the drill. And we have a company in our portfolio right now, Analytical Space, that just won one of the StratFi awards. And that's a 30 some odd $1 million matching grant where it's essentially $30 million to match their next round of Series A investment. Investors are going to fall all over themselves to get that kind of leverage on their dollars. So that's a phenomenal success, a phenomenal example of how the government can push a company to be both commercially successful and also set themselves up to be a DoD contractor. But it is incredibly risky for a company to bet their roadmap on that government funding. So if there's one message that I can give very strongly, it's that, I encourage companies to work with the government as much as possible because it can be incredibly beneficial, but it has to come with the realism of it is a different customer. It is in many ways, a singular marketplace than your commercial marketplace. And if it means hiring different people to handle those different parts of the business, then so be it, because you really need to be able to think on both sides of a very different coin in order to be a successful dual use company.
Real quick segue. Did you design the reindeer behind you?
I did not, but I will give a very precocious 7-year-old credit for that.
That's what we're here to do. So you're talking about funding, and Bernard, you had mentioned some things to me before this call, and I don't want to stereotype, but it seems that a lot of technologies that the military are working on are hard technologies. Not to say that there aren't softwares and things like that, but I think a lot of the groups that are participating in this cohort, they do have tangible products that you can hold. So Bernard, I mean, in terms of if the company's up and going, they're going through this accelerator, they've got some funding coming in, maybe not a $30 million award like we just heard about, but what type of funding trajectory do you want to look for before, as a venture capitalist, you're going to put money in? And then the second question would be, realistically, what should people be asking you for, right? So one of the companies in this cohort has got a nice contract. They're kind of going up. They might want to start approaching VCs. How much would they be thinking about asking for a venture capitalist? And Bernard, if you could shed light on that.
Tommy, I'm not sure if Bernard is.
Well, then, so Bernard, it looks like Bernard might not be here, but
Yeah.
how about if I could toss that out to anyone on this panel? So say there's a hard product, not a software, and they've got money coming in. What is a realistic expectation for a company? Is it
Oh, there he
500
is.
to 1 million?
I can answer.
You're here.
For some
Hey.
reason, by the way, I was only on listening. Nobody had let me in as a panel member. So
Oh,
I
jeez.
don't know. I was getting a bit frustrated. I was like, what's going on here? Anyway.
Sorry, technological difficulties. We're glad you made it.
All right. Well, so let me answer that in the first spot, and I'll try and make it succinct. And I like to use this example first. And we all live with the cultural phenomenon that is Silicon Valley and the software, and also here in Boston in the biotech industry with massive payouts and billion-dollar unicorns. And that I think infects our thinking as people that invest in and build hard tech companies of real things, materials, chemical, mechanical systems, things that the military will use outside of software. The reality is, if you look at the potential exits, and a venture investor is always thinking liquidity. They're generally 10-year funds. Most venture investors take money, and they have 10 years to invest it. And they think, how am I going to, or how are we together going to exit? And we're not trying to build lifetime businesses. For most exits, you have to be bought. There has to be a company that acquires you in our space. These are trade sales. In this, it could be Lockheed, it could be Northrop Grumman, it could be Boeing, it could be anybody. But somebody has to buy us. In the chemicals industry, the biggest chemical company in the world up until recently was BASF. And they had a market cap, I think, of somewhere around 75 billion. I think Apple just surpassed $2 trillion, right? And I saw that. I mean, unbelievable. So if you're Apple and you have a company that's worth $2 trillion, you can afford, you have currency to pay much more for startups than you could possibly even do, even as the world's largest chemical company, of which products you use today. In every one of our rooms in our houses and where we are now, there are BASF products. They make everything, but they're only worth $75 billion. So if you're trying to build a $1 billion company in the hard tech space, there really isn't a good exit. BASF has never bought a $1 billion startup. So I say all this to say, there's no point, I think, for most hard tech startups to get on a trajectory that overshoots the moon, that exceeds what the exit is potential. And you should work backwards. You should say, okay, I'm developing a sensor, or I'm going to sell primarily to in the military market as civilian. The most I can expect, and you should get some advice in this, is to exit for 50 million or $100 million. So does it make sense to go raise 30, $40 million if your exit is $100 million? You might get lucky, but most likely you won't. And the answer is no. So you need to have a funding trajectory that makes it so that you can exit for what is out there. Otherwise, you're on a path, as I say, a bridge to nowhere. You're just CEO of your company and you've raised money that you're going to have to pay back, and you're never going to see any of it. And that's what we preach in this space. That's what we invest in. And I think that's how you need to think about it. So that was a long answer to your first question, and then I'll give more time to somebody else for the second one.
So okay, so that's a good segue. So and Catherine, I promise I'm going to get to Catherine last because hers is going to be probably a topic everybody wants to comment on. So essentially, if you're talking about money and who to raise money from, and it's a hard tech, and you're kind of saying, well, you know, a hard tech isn't necessarily going to be one of these $50 billion valuations. Could be, but probably not. Daniel, as far as other forms of venture capital, I mean, there's corporate venture capital, there's other types of corporate engagements that you can get into. Maybe hard techs fit that demographic more. I mean, can you comment anything on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I most recently was in the corporate venture world at GE Ventures. So corporate venture capital differs from traditional or financial venture capital in that there is some other motivation for a corporation to invest. And that motivation can be one of many things, but normally it's about understanding the role and potential disruption of new technology and being able to partner with young companies to accelerate the trajectory of the larger corporations. So I think there's actually quite a lot of active corporations in this sector, chemical companies, oil companies, and other industrials. They all have a tremendous desire for technology. And you've got to remember that the startups that they want to work with have attributes that they can't necessarily replicate. They have tremendous focus, they have tremendous agility, and they tend to be very close to the customer. And those things are very hard for large companies to do. They may have lots of resources, they may have many engineers, but they don't have those attributes. So I think there are lots and lots of ways in which small companies and large companies can work together. I always tell entrepreneurs to be healthily skeptical about working with a large company. Really understand what the motivation of a business unit is to engage or a investment unit is to invest. And in general, think about business and investment separately. That's my, and I can pause there and pick it up.
Thank you. All right. So the one thing we really haven't touched on, and this is why I waited till the end, is the human element involved in all this. I know venture capital has a lot to do with multiples and how much money to ask for, how much money to raise. You know, in terms of founders, people, definitely entrepreneurs, tend to be a little more open-minded, a little more progressive. During COVID, we've seen explosions in health tech. Also other industries that were dying. The Peloton bike. I mean, I remember reading that company was going under, and now it's everywhere. Between COVID, a lot of the racial injustice, Black Lives Matter movement, how is that changing venture capital? Catherine, I know you wanted to speak to this, but what are you looking for in terms of, kind of back to what Bill said, the founders? How is the current landscape changing this? I mean, what are you seeing in your firm?
Well, I've actually never met Bill, but when he was talking, I had written down my thoughts earlier prior to this meeting, and I wrote down flexible/rigid as a note of mine to talk about, because it seems as though with founders, we've never been through a period, a 3-quarter long period where flexibility has been the most important attribute of any of our founders. You know, none of us have dealt with the kind of twin challenges we're going through right now. Obviously, COVID and kind of the Black Lives Matter movement have hit from different angles, but are equally affecting especially our teams. So founders who are able to, especially now, kind of backseat their egos and look to help either from the VC or from one another. And then also, I think founders who are aware of, you know, you mentioned it's all about multiples for the VC, of course, but the VCs are stuck in the nexus between the portfolio companies and the LPs. So we are equally in a place of tension. And I have never spoken with our LP base more than I have in the past 6 months. So both proactively and reactively, we are talking to our LPs, both to assure them of, you know, the health of our portfolio, to ask them questions about how they think we should approach and deal with things, to deal with their concerns on whether or not we're taking care of our employees in the portfolio companies. Another thing with hardware that's a lot harder to deal with than software is that most of our folks need to be in the office. So they need to be working from a building in person. So whereas Apple and Lyft can just send everyone home for a year, we, on March 20th, I was scrambling with one of our founders to get, to save the cell lines that were in the San Francisco lab, to get someone into the building and to figure out tiered work schedules and PPE and all of those things so that our companies can continue to survive while they're making their hardware and their biologic technologies. So it's a very tense time, I would say, and a very challenging time. And more than ever, I think we appreciate and need founders who, I also wrote down Rumsfeld, who know what they don't know. The unknown unknowns are fucking 2020 right now. It's all of them. So I think the founders who are open to understanding that and asking for help and asking questions, and they're rising to the top right now in our portfolio.
So, I mean, I would like to open this up to the panel. If any of you want to chime in terms of things that have changed for your firms or the way that you conduct your business. I mentioned health tech. I mean, are there other industries that you guys are seeing as winners and losers throughout this whole thing? And maybe even if it's just temporary, I know in theory we can kind of stabilize back to some sort of normal. But for the other panelists, are there industries that people in this accelerator might be thinking about now as a new opportunity that they might not have looked at before?
I can start off and others should jump in. I think across industries, and I'm predominantly investing in the digital domain with Buoyant, but we've seen this huge acceleration in the IT domain, which will interface with the physical domain always.
Right.
So comments like more progress has been made, in the last 2 months for digital transformation in the prior 5 or 10 years. So digital transformation was a lot of talk. And now companies have had to react and have had to do more from the very bottom of their businesses all the way through to the products and customers services and the services they deliver to customers. So I think there's got to recognize that and take advantage of that opportunity that's being created, or the opportunities that are being created there. I'm seeing that the use of digital technologies in legacy industries like energy is suddenly starting to really spike in a meaningful way. And that's can be very exciting for entrepreneurs.
So in terms of, I can't remember where I was reading this, but in terms of deal flow, right? So for venture capital, there's deal flow. How many people are we speaking to coming to the door? The article I was reading was talking about how that's completely different now. And maybe the pitch itself of the entrepreneur to the venture capitalist has changed. Is that true? Do people need to be more conscious of the camera that they're using, what's in the background? I mean, how do you see deal flow, assuming we're kind of in this state of shutdown-ish type of environment? What's the best thing that people in this accelerator or others can do to try to get in front of you to show you what they're working on?
Happy to take a swing at that. So, in the current epoch that we're in, there are some parts of the startup ecosystem that has tailwinds and some that has headwinds. But I think overall, and we don't need to parse that on this panel, but I think overall, for any startup to be successful over time, and I think Catherine noted this, is that there is going to be downtimes and there's going to be uptimes. And to some degree, seeing founders start in a lot of ways downtime allows us to kind of get a better sense of, and I think some other of the panelists noted, terms like flexibility, coachability, strategic thinking. How are we going to make progress in a time where our offices or labs might shut down, or employees might disappear, or et cetera, et cetera. And so, for us, deal flow certainly hasn't slowed down. I think some of the types of companies have shifted a little bit, but I think overall, as we kind of go up to 30,000 feet and see where we are, I think to kind of bring it back to xTech is that I think one thing that we are seeing from the government space is that as we look forward, there's going to have to be investments in infrastructure, in and we not just DoD but DHS, HHS. There are people that are coming up with contracting muscles that they haven't exercised in a very long time, and I think there's an awareness that they will have to continue to do that, not just for COVID, but for infrastructure across the board. So I think for dual use companies, it's an especially exciting time as we look over the next couple of years. And if you just look at sort of, into second term or new administrations, like the kind of numbers that folks are throwing around on infrastructure and investment is really pretty exciting from a dual use perspective, if we as a country can take advantage of it.
I think that's a good question. Can I build off that just tactically for people? Because I think for those that are trying to raise money, this is a crazy time. I mean, we're making investments without meeting people almost. Actually, I almost came close. I put out a term sheet and now we're just over Zoom. And you think about it, and that's just nuts. You're buying into making a hard tech an investment without even meeting people. And in this case, I'm going to drive down and actually meet this team in New Jersey before we end up doing it. But if you're trying to raise money, you got to work in this environment and you have to think outside the box. And if you have a hard tech science that people can touch and it's tangible, you've got to use that to your advantage. Now you can't show up in the VC's office or have a meeting and show them your fantastic sensor or have them meet your lab or your people. It's a lot harder. They're not going to fly out necessarily to come see you as easily. So you got to find a way for them to live and experience the wonderful technology that you've worked in. And just like an old sales track, show your widget so that they can touch and manipulate it and make that connection with you. And I'm not quite sure how you do it over Zoom. You're going to have to do a better job of doing videos, of demonstrating what your lab looks like, the wonderment of your technology, the problem it solves. If you really want to break through the noise of people like me now, investors being that much more isolated and harder to reach because we're just doing virtual. And though I'm willing to drive to quarantine-free states from Massachusetts, it's a different thing to fly to California or Texas at the moment and have to come back and then face that thing. So I think that's the thing you really want to think of. If you're legitimately trying to raise money in the private sector and you're doing hard tech, you have to think of some way to get people to experience what you're doing virtually, and that'll differentiate you.
Bernard, I think that's a good point. Building off that, have good Zoom hygiene. I know it sounds silly, but know how to use the tool, use it effectively, show up on time. There's nothing more than I hate than having a scheduled Zoom pitch and someone saying, oh, I can't get on, or I'm having technical difficulties because, and I'm not pointing you out, Bernard, because you had issues getting on earlier, but that's going to mess up my whole day in terms of pitches. And then I'm going to go over on my next call and it's a snowball effect. So just get familiar with the tool, know how to use it, and plan in advance.
So Bill, you're saying don't have a house that makes it look like you're wearing a dunce cap?
I like the art.
It's unique. I mean, to that point though, I mean, I think you can also add a human element, right? So for me, I've got a Maryland map behind me and a picture of a harbor, right? I mean, so it's okay. Obviously you might have a nephew or niece or some kids tells us about you, but it adds a little flavor. I think we're close to our time. Yeah. I want to thank the panel. I do want to let everyone on the accelerator know that I guess technically I have been on this FedTech journey almost as long as Ben Solomon, not quite as long. And the one thing I want everyone to take home from this is that the network that has been developed from FedTech and from xTech and NSIN is invaluable. So take advantage of the program. Once you're out, it doesn't end. They're going to ask you to host panels for people that you've never met before, and it just keeps going. So again, thank you guys. And Paula, I'm going to hand it to you. And I appreciate you putting this together.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you for sharing your insights, and you gave us a lot to think about. And I hope you'll all stay around for, I hope everyone, the audience and the VCs will stay around. Our companies are going to be doing their pitches from 3:30 to 5, and we'd love to get your feedback. And yeah, great to have you here. Well, there was a mention of another kind of VC, which is a CVC, a corporate venture capitalist. And that is what our next panel is going to be about: the who, what, and why of corporate venture capital. And our moderator for this session is Seema Sood, and she is the business development lead for North America innovation for Philips. And Seema has positioned innovative solutions in life sciences, devices, and informatics in North America and global markets. She's built long-term strategic partnerships that drive revenue and better health outcomes. In addition, she consults with young companies on commercial acceleration strategies and corporate partnerships. At Philips, she evaluates early stage business opportunities, de-risking them to build and accelerate adjacent ventures. She also works on new business creation, working with multifunctional teams to create new value propositions that extend the product portfolio. And in addition to her domain expertise in the health vertical, Seema has worked to drive change in the education and energy sectors as well. Seema, I know you and your panel have a great breadth and depth of expertise and will help us all understand and appreciate the variety of roles that corporate venture capital can play in the innovation ecosystem. So the mic is yours to introduce the great panel. Seema, are you here?
Here we go.
Okay,
Can you guys hear me?
beautiful.
Yeah.
Take it away.
So I'm going to try to, there we go. Okay, so hi everybody. It was such an honor to be here. Thank you, Paula, for that great introduction. I also want to give a big compliment to Gunnar, to Will. I've had the chance to mentor one of the companies, and I've just really enjoyed the process. It's been a great program, and excited for the pitch session today. I know they've worked very hard. I really am excited to introduce the panel that Paula has put together for us to understand more about corporate venture capital. So I'm going to just bear with me. I'm going to read a few introductions so you know who you're speaking to. You have some really talented people here, and then we're going to dive into content. So first, Betsy Bluestone. She is the Global Director of Scouting and Partnerships for P&G Ventures. She sources brands, technology capabilities, and talent for P&G Startup Studio, has over 20 years of sales and brand management experience, and a track record of success across channels, geographies, billion-dollar brands, startups, and acquisitions. She's also a very dedicated advocate and mentor for female founders and founders of color, which is very appreciated. So thank you, Betsy. Charlie Pertel is the Vice President of New Ventures for Danaher Innovations. He has spent more than a decade at Danaher and helped found the Danaher Innovation Center in 2018. He has led business development strategy for 2 different billion-dollar operating companies and has spent 5 years in the corporate M&A group. And prior to Danaher, has 20 years of experience in the life science vertical and biotech. Ed Greer is a corporate technology scout for Dow Chemical Ventures and Business Development. Ed finds and evaluates technologies that complement Dow's robust research and development pipeline and have the potential to contribute to the company's long-term success. Ed has extensive experience in research management, market development, and business development for electronic materials and advanced materials markets. And Sung Yoon Yang, General Manager and Vice President of Samsung Ventures. He's actually new to California, joined that office in April of 2018. And has invested globally in more than 20 startups developing semiconductor manufacturing technologies for materials, equipment, and software. So what you have is a really broad group of talent. So the first thing I will say to the startups on the phone is, take these names down and try to find these people, because they're going to be able to help you in these very unique roles that they have. And part of that uniqueness is the variety in what is a corporate venture. And so I'd like to kick off with Betsy, maybe if you could start out talking a little bit about what is a corporate venture group from your perspective, and I'm going to share that mic with a few others.
Great, thanks, Seema.
Sure.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm on my phone on one hand and on the camera on the other. They don't work together for some reason.
We can hear you. Yes, we're good.
Okay. So thanks for having me. I am a part of P&G Ventures, and P&G Ventures really exists to create new brands and new businesses in categories where P&G doesn't already compete. So our game is very much a best of both worlds. So taking the best of the startup or the inventor and bringing it together with the capabilities of a big corporation. And that's the way that we build and accelerate brands. So we're less CVC and more startup studio. And my job within that is what I do is actually scout for solutions externally. So try to find new technologies for the company and then ultimately deliver the partnership relationship that is a win-win for both P&G and for the startup.
Great. So that is a very unique proposition. Ed, can you talk a little bit about how it works at Dow?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I have a 6-word pithy summary of the difference between an institutional or financial investor and a corporate venture capital group, and that is that I feel like a financial investor is trying to build a financially attractive exit, while a CVC is usually trying to build a financially attractive company. So we're not necessarily looking for the exit, but instead for a company to be there at the end of it. Dow's been doing corporate venture capital for over 25 years. Primarily, we focus on companies that are founded on innovations in chemicals and materials, as you might expect. But we also invest in capabilities such as industrial IoT, Internet of Things, and robotics. We like to start early. So we started investing in companies at the seed and A rounds. So, down at TRL levels of 3-ish. And that's because we intend to bring Dow capability beyond simple financing. So we're looking to assist with testing or R&D, or scale up manufacturing, supply chain, access to customers and marketing. All of these things, they take a long time to develop. And of course, hard tech companies take a long time to commercialize. If there's capability we can apply to shorten that time scale or to reduce the amount of capital that's required, we're going to bring that along as part of the package. Structurally, we're part of the Dow Chemical Company, so we're not a separate entity. We can't go off and do our own thing. We only invest in support of existing Dow business units. And also point out that we do a large number of partnerships, so that can be pretty much anything that doesn't involve equity, such as a joint development, licensing, distribution agreements, a variety of structures.
Great, thank you. Fairly comprehensive. So what about at Samsung? What is it like there? There we go. You're muted.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. So actually, Samsung Ventures is quite similar to the traditional corporate venture capital. So basically, the area we are investing in is quite if there is any potential collaboration with any of our business unit, then that could be a candidate for our investment. As Ed mentioned, it's not for the capital gain, but more for strategic gain from the investment. So most of the investment target could be the candidate, the startup having any technology or business that could be a supplier to Samsung or the customer for Samsung. So there are two parts of the strategic fit. Nowadays we are focusing new areas as well. Samsung is well known for the electronics company, the handset or memory business, but Samsung also has the insurance business as well. So we are expanding our area for investment, and then it's quite. And then we also trying to invest in non-strategic investment as well, which could be a candidate for new business opportunity for Samsung, because Samsung is good in some part, but for others we are not good at. So we are expanding our area for investment nowadays. So I think in general, Samsung Ventures is quite similar to corporate ventures, but nowadays we are trying to be more flexible on that.
Yeah. So I think this is such a great way of summarizing different approaches. Overall, I agree with Ed. You have to be aligned as a startup where your strategic fit matches the audience that you're trying to address. And sometimes I see pitches from a corporate perspective that are really investment pitches, and they're not aligned with my goals as a company or my goals even in the venture community. So hopefully just seeing the range in this panel will help you think about how are you going to pitch this particular kind of group, because it needs to be different from a strategic partner perspective, likely than it would for an investor. And this audience reflects that. I think one of the major business challenges that was mentioned on the previous panel is the disruption of COVID and the opportunity of it. And so we're going to pivot a little bit to talk about how that has impacted the corporate world a little bit, and maybe some suggestions and guidance on how to manage COVID. And I'd like to ask Charlie if you could speak to that, especially in the health vertical. You probably have some really unique expertise in that space. You're muted, Charlie.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Boy, I live on Zoom and yet I still get tripped up on that about every other call. So thank you. So great question. And 6 months ago, if you asked me to predict where we'd be today, I would have come up with a very different answer. 6 months ago, we really thought the sky was falling, that capital markets were going to come to a halt and capital was going to dry up. And maybe not too ironically, in the healthcare space and biotech in particular, we've really seen sort of the opposite reaction. You've seen money flood into the market. So anything COVID related, there are piles of money being funneled into that. And so a very different outcome. And the IPO window in particular is wide open for biotech, including tools right now. So valuations are also just, I think, sky high. So I never would have predicted that. So we're as busy as ever for any tools or platforms that are enabling COVID research or technologies around COVID testing as an example. Even in the life science space, though, there are really it's a little bit of a tale of two cities. So if you're not in that COVID stream, there are headwinds. And so the reality is deals are taking longer in the space, particularly if you're not squarely in that Gulf Stream of COVID. People have definitely had to do some belt tightening around expenses. So making sure that they remain agile and cognizant of fundraising activities slowing down to a degree, as well as then sales processes as well. People are literally not in the lab. They can't use equipment if they're trying to bring on board a new platform technology. Those sales cycles are really taking a lot longer. And so companies are going to have to adjust to that reality. However, it is a good time to be an entrepreneur in the biotech and healthcare space generally. I think there's a degree of optimism there. There is a question of how long will this last? How long will that IPO window stay open the way it is? But I think there's still a ton of interest in cash and tools that can enable and accelerate drug discovery and improve testing.
Nice. I love that optimism. That's very exciting. Betsy, can you talk a little about how, your perspective is more consumer, I'm going to make the assumption, consumer back. What is it like in that space?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have seen, we continue to invest. I generally am seeing people in the CPG space continue to invest. I think what's interesting here is anytime there are, massive fundamental shifts in consumer behavior, value is created, right? Because as consumers move to do things differently, to have a different center of gravity, opportunity is created. And so while clearly there is major tension on businesses and families, and that can't be denied, the pandemic is also a catalyst, right? It is a catalyst for, people being more focused on their home, being more focused on their family, being more focused on their health and hygiene. And so, from a P&G Ventures perspective, what I would say is happening is we're expanding our scope. So we've got a list of categories that we traditionally work in, think sleep, women's wellness, men's wellness, things like that, active aging. all of those spaces sort of take on a different vantage point when you think about the shifts that are happening for consumers. So I'm super optimistic. I think billions of dollars of value will be created over the next couple of years. And for entrepreneurs, I think, that ability to pivot and to see where the ground is moving, and to be able to move to that, what's hot is really important. And we have seen some absolutely brilliant pivots over the last 6 months, people who were in surrounding areas that are moving into places that are really hot right now. So I'm pretty optimistic.
That's great. I love it. I will echo that, Philip. I've never been more busy building new business ventures and, planning and pivoting to 3 years out. So we're really looking at what's happening in the ecosystem, and we're really building for a new reality of health delivery. And it's exciting because it's kind of galvanizing some initiatives that really put, as you say, Betsy, the consumer at the center of their health. It's really galvanizing that need and that approach. Like, it's exciting. I think it's an exciting time. So given that, this audience, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's all these changes happening. Let's get a little tactical about how do we see, and how can we advise these young entrepreneurs to really tactically engage effectively with corporates. And I gave a very high level, but let's dig into it. So Ed, could you talk a little bit about your advice around, you could talk about specifics like exclusivity or relationship management, timeline, and just what you've seen as strengths and weaknesses of companies working with you.
Sure, Seema, I'm going to go back to something that you mentioned before, which was alignment. And it's really key to know yourself as well as to know and do diligence on your potential partner, and which in this case would be either an institutional or a corporate venture capital group. So the two things are really alignment and complementarity. And alignment, I mean alignment of interests. So each party needs to have the same, or at least mutually supportive goals. If your goal is to sell your company in 2 years, and my goal in investing in you is to secure a source of supply and make that stable, but I don't want to actually make that product myself, then we're going to be at odds, and things aren't going to work out in the long term. And probably you're not going to be very happy, and we're not either. And as far as their complementarity goes, again, you're looking for the strengths of each party to fill gaps in the others. So if you're making a wonderful product, but the market's really in China and you don't have distribution there, then look for a partner who does have distribution there. Conversely, if there's a problem that you're having somewhere in your supply chain, or a manufacturing technique that you need, look for something that will fill that. And especially for these large companies that are CVCs, almost all of us, if you read our annual report, you'll see what our strengths are, you'll see what our long-term goals are, and the best pitches I've ever seen have mapped what you're asking for to stuff I've said I'm going to do. It makes it very easy to put together just a beautiful picture that way.
That's very helpful. Charlie, could you expand on that a little bit? And actually, just to prepare the panelists, I think we're going to have time to ask each of you to speak to this a little. So maybe touch on what you haven't heard from one of the other panelists as we go. Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie.
So I like the alignment. Maybe some other just tactical advice is just around what a typical process time may look like. And I think we're pretty quick on diligence, but from the time we introduce it to our committee to the time that we're ready to then enter into a closing period is about 6 to 8 weeks. So just from a point of view of diligence and what's realistic, I think entrepreneurs need to bear that in mind. I think the other thing to bear in mind is we're a small group and we see about 300 companies in a year. We'll go to diligence on about 30 companies. And so first of all, don't be offended if you don't get that call back. And enter into diligence. And there could be a whole lot of different reasons. So maybe the alignment wasn't right. Maybe it was the stage wasn't right. So there's doesn't mean that you don't have a great idea or a successful company if a particular partner chooses not to go forward. So bear in mind just the process, bear in mind, and our deal flow probably isn't all that different from lots of other venture groups, and it's probably similar for the financial investors as well. So it also means really work on your pitch. You got to be able to deliver that very, very succinctly. If you have more than a dozen slides, you probably have too many, just given the volume of things that people are seeing.
Very helpful. Sung, can you comment on that too? And kind of what's the best way, as well as maybe a little bit around pitch?
Yeah, sure. Around the pitch, right?
Well, that, and also tactically, how is it?
Yeah,
How
sure.
would you advise an entrepreneur? How should they approach Samsung? What's the
Yeah.
tactical advice?
Right. So I'd like to talk about a little bit, the strategy, tactical strategy for entrepreneurs when they talk with Samsung, because, the most CVCs has their own structures. So for Samsung, for example, the Samsung Ventures is independent organization within Samsung. And, because of that, we could be the middle between our business unit and the enterprise, which means that, for example, the exclusivity. So basically, our business unit, probably they want the exclusivity, which means that they want to access the technology in advance their competitors, for example, and then, or they want to use their technology for a certain time exclusively. But as a Samsung Ventures, when we invest in the company, it's not a good strategy. So if any entrepreneurs who get money from Samsung through Samsung Ventures, please leverage the structure of Samsung and the Samsung Ventures and communicate, and then get the benefit from structure of Samsung, that because we should help our portfolio companies, and we try to help how to avoid that kind of hard situation that provides some exclusivity to Samsung business unit. And I think the corporate venture could have very specific role, and basically they help not only our corporate but also entrepreneurs. So I encourage the entrepreneur to communicate with CVC group and then the people, to understand their customers and then also investors. So that is what I
Yeah,
want
and
to
that's a great point that sometimes young, smaller companies don't recognize, but we are very, very big. And so the interests of different groups in these corporates are different, and they have different goals and outcomes. So finding that right fit and that right communication platform for your value to the business is really critical. And that's really the role of the people that you've got here. So find the people that understand how to build relationships between small and big businesses when you talk to corporates. Those are the people that are going to accelerate you. And to Sung's point, I think that's a great point. Betsy, can you speak a little bit to what does exclusivity mean for P&G? What are some, even what does it mean at all? Some of these startups may not know, and kind of what's your advice around that?
Yeah, so I'd say from a P&G Ventures perspective, and just P&G broadly, we're looking for technically superior products. Now, sometimes that means for a particular field of use, and so oftentimes you'll see that there are other markets that are B2B markets or other markets that P&G doesn't play in, and so we're pretty reasonable about what's our field of use versus somebody else's field of use. But for us, it really starts with the technology. We like technology. We like early seed and Series A. We like technology that is protected. So IP, or a good sort of moat around your technology, so that people can't fast follow you, is really important. Is a super important tactic. And then I would just say, kind of being clear about what it is that you're looking for and what works. If you've got another market that you're selling to, how does that fit within the P&G framework?
That's very helpful. Thank you. I have some background noise, so I keep muting. Ed, you talked a little bit, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but you talked a little bit about the difference between like a partnership kind of engagement and how like a startup can really derive value aside from financial investment from your corporate. I think it'd be helpful to talk a little bit about what does that look like? And how do you find your funnel of strategic partners? A lot of times I feel like startups just wait for whoever approaches them, but that may not be the best partner for them. So I think it would be helpful for you to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's sort of two different questions. Let me first give an example of a relationship which is completely non-dilutive. We had a company that we saw that was making a novel product out of some plastic, which we make a lot of. And they came to us asking for an investment, and we looked at it and thought, well, it'd be really nice to see this company succeed, but we really don't. It was a beer keg company, and as much as I'd like to have a plastic beer keg, I don't actually need to own a piece of the company. So what we wound up structuring was and they didn't really know what plastic to use, and they really hadn't molded beer kegs before, and they're pretty big, so they required some engineering. So we provided essentially the consulting on how to do it and what plastic to use, and we gave them enough plastic to make their first run of product free of charge. And in return, we asked for an agreement that they would purchase the material from us at market price for a specified period of time, a finite period of time. So they got non-dilutive free engineering, they got non-dilutive free product, they got the product in the market, and we got a customer. So it was, and what did we pay for it? Well, the person's engineering time who was already on staff, so incremental costs are pretty small, and marginal cost of production on the plastic. So I guess in B school they teach you this is trading items of unequal value, right? To us the cost was low, to them the value was high, and vice versa. So it really is limited only by your imagination as to how you can structure these kind of deals. And in this one time, I've managed to forget the second part of your question. So. You're on mute.
You know what? Why don't we pivot? I think we have about 4 minutes left anyway. So what would be helpful, I think we're about to launch into the pitches. So I think it would be great to get advice from all of you on what makes, we heard the 12-side max from Charlie already, but Charlie, what makes for a good pitch? Tell a story about a good one, or what advice would you give this this group? Charlie, are you gonna?
I'll raise my hand here. I think sort of the 4 steps. Keep the wind up really short and start with what's the problem that you're trying to solve, who cares about it, and why is it important. Next thing is around really be crisp and clear on what specifically is your solution and the data supporting your claims. So connect those two, make it really clear, put those straight up front, and don't take 5 slides trying to explain those things. State why you're advantaged technologically and as a team. So why are you unique? Why should I bet on you? And how will that advantage be sustained through time? Is it intellectual property? Is it first mover advantage? It helped me understand that sustainability of the advantage. And then be really clear on what are the key milestones the next 18 to 24 months tied to a specific funding request. And I think this is where you really need to be honest and thoughtful around how much money is it going to take to get to those milestones. And I'm always thinking about how much cash is it going to require to get to break even, and thinking about those key milestones. And are you going to have enough money to get to that milestone, factoring in some risk? So if everything goes perfectly, typically that's the model people are using, and they often undershoot the time and the money that's required, and undershooting can be really painful for a venture. So those are my 4 bits on a perfect pitch.
Yeah, very sound advice. Sun, do you want to chime in there? Are there things that you could add in?
Yeah, I mean, Charles told a lot about for pitch today. So what I'd like to talk to entrepreneurs today is that please communicate a lot with your client or customers, because actually what I realize is that customers and clients change very fast and quite frequently. So try to communicate with them as much as possible and as frequently as possible. And then sometimes they pretend there's no needs, but actually they have needs. So please deep dive their needs, and then please try to understand more and deeply, and then that would be helpful for them, I think.
Great advice. Betsy, do you have sort of last minute or last ending closing advice for
Yeah.
pitches? Yeah.
The last thing I guess I would say is 99% of the time, you know your story. So just tell your story. Everybody's nervous when they pitch, especially when there's a lot of money on the line. But I find that the people that do it best are just focused on telling their story. And that's what really comes through: your passion, the pain point, how you're going to solve it, what's unique about it, all comes across best when you're telling the story. So just tell your story.
Love it. Great. So I think that kind of rounds out our panel. I appreciate very much all of you, Ed, Charlie, Soon, Betsy, great advice. Really appreciate the experience you're bringing to the conversation. Paula, thanks for inviting and including all of us in this really exciting day.
Thank you, Seema and panel. That was fantastic. Great advice. Guess what? All right. So in 15 minutes, everyone, please stay around because we have 10 companies. And Charlie, you'll be pleased to see that they're doing 6 slides. So we'll see how well they can do their story. And Betsy, we've coached people, tell your story, 6 slides, 4 minutes. They prepared fantastic pitches. Everybody will get a chance to give feedback. So VCs, CVCs, stay tuned. We'll ask you for your feedback. Audience, everyone else, we're going to have an audience choice award. So everybody, please stay with us. The pitches will start at 3:30. Should be a lot of fun. I've seen them all. They're fantastic. Thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, hopefully everyone got a nice break there. Check this real quick. All right, it's officially 3:30, so we're going to get started with our company pitches here. So my name is Gunnar Gillespie. I'm an analyst at FedTech. I'll be moderating these pitches until 5:30 when we'll close up with some closing remarks. But first up here, I'd like to give some context to these companies. You know, the xTech Search Prize Competition is an open call that the U.S. Army puts out. It's to any small business in the United States that wants to engage or transition military systems. So basically what we have is these companies, they're small businesses, they want to sell into the DoD, and the accelerator helps them transition those technologies, but they put out a giant open call. You know, they had 400 applications that got whittled down to 60 companies, and then we had 20 semifinalists. So these companies you're looking at here, these 10 companies are the cream of the crop for 2020. And so they've all been identified, and they've been validated, and they've received a ton of feedback. And so these are really the cream of the crop. They're the best companies that the Army has identified. And so just for the format here, each of these companies is going to have exactly 4 minutes. We're going to have hard stop times there, 6 slides each. And then at the very end, we're going to have a 6-minute Q&A where VCs, if you're listening, and CVCs, just click that raise hand button. I can allow you to talk, and then you can ask companies a question. And I'll also perform a poll at the end of each pitch. Companies, I'm asking you, please don't answer the polls. Just leave that to the VCs. That will all be anonymous. We'll share that at the very end. And then finally, for the Q&A, make sure you raise your hand so you can speak. I'm going to bring up our first company here. We have Bounce Imaging with CEO Francisco Aguilar. All right, Francisco, here we are. And Mark Farguson. Let's see if we can get them in here real quick. Francisco, you there?
Mute. All right.
Hey, Francisco, you mind turning on your camera real quick?
Trying. Sorry, Zoom's uncooperative, so I appreciate it.
It's all good. I'm going to set up a timer here, and you'll have exactly 4 minutes. That sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. And apologies in advance to the other companies that we won't be able to stick around for your pitches, but we have an Air Force thing, so we appreciate being able to go first. Thank you.
Awesome to hear. So I'll run the slides for you, and you let me know when you're ready to go.
Great. Let's go. Thanks. All right. So thank you all very much for the time. Every day we ask police, soldiers, firefighters, and other first responders to enter dangerous, unseen spaces in the performance of their duty. So whether it's police responding to a mass shooting or firefighters digging through the rubble after a building collapse, the inability to see around a corner or inside a space can cost lives. So on the next slide, you might think, well, aren't there robots and drones and all sorts of cool things that should let us do this? But the reality is that they're really expensive, they're hard to carry, hard to use, and you're always kind of looking through a straw, trying to understand the world. So what we make is this, a throwable omnidirectional camera, something you can toss into a space and get an instant 360-degree view sent to multiple people right on their smartphone to give instant situational awareness. If you click forward, you'll see how that works.
Suspect is in the southwest corner.
Great. So on the next slide, please. Core tech behind this is twofold. It's a stitching method. It's about 200 times faster than traditional ways of doing it. So a lot less battery, a lot less power. And then a synchronization that means that if you throw this thing off a bridge, you'll get a perfectly stable bridge, even video, even as the camera tumbles. So Gunnar, if you can advance one, I think that'll show a quick view of that. I was just throwing it off Bixby Bridge and Route 1. And then if you click forward again, as the thing spins on a rope, you get a perfectly stabilized image. So that's our neat trick. And if you can click forward, please. We're deployed with about 300 police and fire departments around the world. We've been doing a lot of DoD work in the last about year and a half. We've doubled revenues the last 2 years. Just landed a couple of multi-million-dollar contracts from DoD to get these things further into special operations use. If you can move forward, please. And we're targeting initially security and defense markets, but we see applications for this in all sorts of spaces, from industrial safety to consumer applications. And so we think it's got a lot of potential and a lot of interesting ways that it can be used in future, not just in this format, but applied to robots, drones, vehicles, etc. Great. So thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Francisco. Now I'm going to pull up the first poll. I'm going to launch this, and we just asked the companies not to vote. We're going to leave it up to the VCs. And we're not going to share this poll until the very, very end. And so now we'll go ahead and begin the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, looks like Oren, we should be able to hear you if you want to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Hey, Francisco.
Hey, Oren, how are you?
Good. Can you just talk a little bit how you built up the $8 billion of addressable market?
Yep.
It's pretty difficult with selling, individual hardware, even just in the DoD, to establish that kind of a market size. So, yeah, if you could just talk to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at, we're looking at the scale of deployment, we're looking at the total addressable market size, right? And we're looking at the eligible users times the price of the camera. So that gives you the chunks that are in the different pieces. So there's about 750,000 eligible users on the police market. There's about 1 million eligible users across DoD pieces. And then in industrial safety and other applications, there's a whole bunch of other use cases. So that's how we built that up. And since we last talked to you, our prices are actually a lot higher per unit than they once were, as we've specialized our tech for DoD stuff.
All right, it looks like Catherine has a question here.
Yep, please.
Catherine, you should be able to speak.
Hey there, yeah, this is Catherine with the Anzu Partners. Just curious if you could address the competitive market a bit more in terms of, I know you mentioned the drones and the larger pieces of hardware, but are there other more hand-sized pieces of hardware that are competitive?
Yeah, so most of what we see out there, most of the investment is in things like drones and robotics, and there's a reason for that, right? Really specialized users will pay a lot of money for those tools. Where we see an opportunity is in sort of short-term, very quick deployment of things, filling in the gaps that you don't have enough time to pull a drone overhead or to pull in a robot, and you don't have enough ability to focus on that piece. So there are sort of things like pull cameras that tend to be pretty old technology and pretty expensive at the simple end, and it goes up to very advanced micro drones that can go into a building but cost $120,000 a piece. Is sort of the landscape. It's nothing really like what we do in terms of, and particularly in the 360 context.
And then I presume most of these, you're not assuming you're going to recover all of these
right
devices.
Yeah, so, and that has been the experience to date. So we used to have a larger camera. They've now having us use these, they made us build a smaller version for DoD use because they're often sending multiple of these into a building as they're going through it and not recovering them if it's too dangerous to get them back.
Yeah.
So there's also a replacement piece. Sorry, Oren, that I didn't mention, that there is some, these are at times expendable.
Good questions. Any more questions? We've got a couple minutes here before the next pitch. All right, looks like we have Charles would like to speak. Charles, we should be able to hear you now.
Great. Just a quick question. What was the average selling price here?
These things run from about $3,000 in civilian markets to about 6,000 to 7,000 in DoD markets. We're also working through this program on a thermal variant, and that'll probably run somewhere closer to 15 to 20.
Got it. And then as far as competition goes, yes, obviously scopes would be a competing technology, and are you price competitive with those? I'm not that familiar with it.
Yeah, so we're about a third of the cost of tactical pole cams, and we're about, like, for example, when we have our canine cameras and our dogs, we're about a third to a fourth the cost of the canine camera systems that are being deployed.
And any objections around lack of precision? So the advantage of when you're threading scopes in places, you can at least aim and know where it's going. But with this is, relies on how good you're at throwing this thing and where it needs to go. Are there any controllers here? Could you be rolling these things with actuators and things like that so that there's more precise positioning, or how do you?
Yeah, so we've looked into that, but one of our core things that we've done from the beginning that's a little counterintuitive is we've tried to keep this as simple as possible, because our users are getting shot at under a lot of pressure, and so they don't really have the attention space to be driving something around or very specifically. So this is something that you can quickly throw in, and you can have it on a rope and wing it back if you miss, but it also captures all the information as it flies through the room, so you can step back in time. And so even if it goes too far, you can always roll back in time and look what you passed along the way in 360. You never lose the information, at least.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, great question. So we'll move on here. I'm going to bring in Caleb Carr. Thank you, Francisco, very much. Appreciate it. We're going to bring in Caleb Carr, CEO and founder of Vida Inclinata. Caleb, are you there? Let's see. Hey, Caleb, can you hear me?
I can.
Sure, I'm going to set a timer here for 4 minutes, and whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb Carr. I'm the president and CEO of Vida Inclinata Technologies. Simply put, Vida develops technology that brings people home every time. Now, for a case of background, I'm a search and rescue tech. About 10 years ago, a friend of mine went down with cardiac arrest. We called an Oregon National Guard Black Hawk helicopter to come rescue him, but that basket kept swinging back and forth, unable to make it through the trees. After multiple attempts, the helicopter pilot called off the mission, and my friend died minutes later. That was my mission, and that was the reality why I founded Vida Inclinata Technologies. However, baskets swinging below aircraft is not just the only problem. Meanwhile, sling load operations cause aircraft to drop loads on a very regular basis, causing millions of dollars. One of the most apparent operations and problems that we've seen, next slide please, is this classic video of Miss Metro. Here out of Arizona, she's actively being airlifted into an aircraft, but that basket kept spinning uncontrollably. Vida's technology stops this in about 3 seconds and would have prevented a lawsuit that she is actively taking against the Phoenix Fire Department for $2 million. Next slide. To solve this problem, Vida has developed a load stability system, or LSS. Essentially, it's a drone that attaches directly to the cable or to the load and provides counter thrust in the direction of the swing to bring the load to center. We have a product suite of 4, all of which currently operate on exactly the same type of operation, but with different types of applications. Really, it's a series of sensors that we take from the US Air Force Predator drone and sense where the system is in regards to space. We then couple that and fuse that with data and control laws to be able to understand where we are, and then calculate exactly how much thrust is needed from each individual fan to bring the load directly to center. Whether it's for litters like Miss Metro or all the way up to sling load operations for cranes and helicopters, we're able to stabilize up to 66,000 pounds in 60-knot winds. Next slide. For an example of this, you'll see a video here where essentially not only can you eliminate this rotation, but you'll notice that within about 3 seconds, we can bring that completely to rest. Meanwhile, on the next slide, you would see a video of that load suspended, swinging back and forth. And as that system is turned on mid-swing, it would bring that load directly to rest. Where it gets exciting, next slide, is where Vida's going. We've already secured both congressional appropriations and authorization in FY21. We are looking at close to 28.1 million in revenue this year from the US government primarily, in addition to about 8 unit sales of which our unit sales are about 400,000 on a COGS of about 40,000 to manufacture. Meanwhile, we've got rapid growth on the horizon with agreement between PD Medevac, PEO Aviation, Congress, and the committees to be able to deploy close to 500 systems in the next 3 years. We already carry the support of General Murray among AFC and Future Vertical Lift in order to make sure that that deployment happens. Meanwhile, a requirement has already been established for this deployment. Next slide. VITA's on a trajectory that's going to change the way that helicopter hoisting operations are done. But most importantly, we are building technology that will ensure that a lack of it is not the difference between life or death when it comes to you or one of your loved ones. Thank you.
Awesome pitch, Caleb. Thank you very much. So I'm going to launch the poll for Vita and Clinata here. Remember, companies, please don't vote. But VCs and CVCs, would you like to ask a question here? Please raise your hand. Charles, do you have a question? Oh,
sorry, I think I haven't lowered my hand, but I did have a question, I guess, just around in terms of IP protecting this, what's to prevent other people from following?
So we have 56 patents globally. We have 2 core patents that focus on using modular thrusts to be able to stabilize a load that pushes matter. In addition to that, we've also secured from a competitive landscape perspective, the only real solution is a rope. And so the likelihood of someone coming into this space would most likely result in IP infringement.
Looks like Oren Hoffman has a question here.
Yeah, on the commercial side of the house, it seems like most of the value proposition is around offsetting liabilities or lost equipment or damage due to sling loading or whatnot. But insofar as it's a relatively expensive system relative to the system not being in place, how has been the commercial response? Is there budgets in sling load operators to essentially buy expensive equipment to offset those costs? You can speak to that kind of sales cycle.
Yeah, for sure. So the commercial market is growing pretty rapidly. So our first units are actually being deployed in October, primarily to helicopter companies in Alaska. Meanwhile, there's a series of crane companies, including Digging and Rigging out of Maryland and a couple others that have already begun to field these systems as well. From the crane perspective, really it's the customers that are buying it. So for example, out of Alaska, it's not the helicopter company buying it, it's the state of Alaska that's funding it under their contract because they want to ensure that they can operate in X amount of winds or whatever. So essentially we just have endorsers, which are the actual users, but really the buyer is the people that are actually funding the job. Which is a good place for us to be. In addition to that, we have also received support, and you will see a bill hitting the House floor next month, which will amount to close to $17 billion in sales for VITA, which is an active mandate for all load stabilization, or excuse me, for load stabilization on all cranes below 70,000 pounds. That is actively about to hit the House. If that is successful, that will amount to close to 42,000 sales of our sling load system by the end of 2024. And we've already received both union, contract, and congressional support for that action, including from the executive office.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Looks like we'll move on here then. Thank you very much, Caleb. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a good one. Our next company, Caricure, is Dr. Carrie-Ann Greenhall. Carrie-Ann, I'm going to promote you now. Just one moment. Hey, Carrie-Ann, can you hear me?
Unmute. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep. All right, whenever you're ready, you got 4 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Gunnar. Feel free to go to the first slide. So the advanced wound care market is one of the fastest growing in the medical device space, where there are significant increases projected over the next 5 to 7 years, due in large to the aging population and rise in diabetes and skin cancer worldwide. Next. One of the greatest threats to effective wound care is infection. In a typical hospital today, between 25 and 40% of beds are occupied by patients with wounds. And if these wounds become infected, that leads to $2 to $3 million in excess medical costs for the hospital per year. So what if there was a low cost, simple to use product that could cut down on dressing changes, costs for nursing and hospital care, and lengthy hospital stays by eliminating the risk of these debilitating and oftentimes life-threatening infections. Next. CariCure Medical's spray-on antibacterial wound dressings are that product. Our FDA-cleared products are a unique solution for sealing and preventing infections on any size and shape wound at every level of care, from over-the-counter use to medical professionals to our military service members. Our products can prevent serious complications from infection and speed healing with a simple to use point and spray product. Next. So how are we better, right? Well, we're not just another Me Too wound care product. Our products are highly mobile with low logistical burden. So they can be used on the go, over the counter, and for our military members to be used in the field to address a wide range of wounds that can form a durable, elastic, and waterproof barrier to protect wounds against infection. Next. They contain a patented multivalent nanosilver that can kill even resistant bacteria within a wound within 4 hours of application. And our unique water-based spray-on system allows the product to get deep into every nook and cranny to hydrate wounds and kill germs deep within them that sheet and fabric dressings simply cannot do. Next. Our newest product on the market also contains fast-acting lidocaine that we're going to have FDA registered by the end of this year, hopefully, to provide localized pain management. So we're looking to cut down on opiate use in hospitals and also to provide some localized pain management and relief for injured warfighters in the field. Each CariCure Medical bottle contains over 150 applications, providing a cost-saving multi-use system that will last throughout a patient's entire wound care. The products are also a robust solution for military and mass casualty applications where they can be used at every level of wound care. Next. We've recently received notice of award for a DoD direct to phase 2 SBIR grant to treat large surface area, third degree infected combat related burns. And we're also working with Army groups, including surgical research and chem bio nuclear groups to address areas like nerve and mustard agent related wounds and third degree burn wounds. There is currently a major gap in advanced wound care for FDA cleared products to treat these indications, and we plan on filling it with our products. Next. So as our customers and supporters in the DoD can attest, CariCure Medical products can save time and money, keep soldiers in the fight longer, but most importantly, save lives and limbs when used to seal and prevent wounds and protect wounds, both on and off the field. And we even have a full line of animal healthcare products as well. Next. And lastly, we have an effective team of operators and advisors who are dedicated to making CariCure a success. Thank you guys so much, and I'll take any questions.
Awesome pitch. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
anyone who has questions, and if you'd like to ask one as well, you can just type it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. All right, it looks like Catherine has a question here.
Hey, Carrie Ann, great pitch, and congrats on the phase 2.
Thank you.
Curious if you could go into a bit more detail on the commercial product lines. I think we learned a lot about the military aspects of it, and of course makes sense for this audience, but be curious to learn more about both the animal and the OTC if you have a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had consumer products on the market since 2013. We initially launched in Publix and Kroger stores nationwide. I think at the peak we were in about 2,500 brick and mortar stores. And now we've kind of scaled that back and are pretty much living online through Amazon and some of the great natural health stores and websites like Thrive Market. We have three consumer products that are available for sale today. And we have a line of about 6 products on the animal space. And we've pretty much been online for those as well. We work with a lot of veterinarians too. And we actually work with Busch Gardens here in Tampa and a couple of zoos that use the products on the exotic animals as well.
Got it. And then also just to follow up, you spoke a bit about the kind of the market comparison between the bandages or the sheets solutions, but are there other sprayable solutions that are competitive with you?
Not in the advanced wound care market. On the consumer side, you know, our competitors New Skin or NextCare from 3M. We're a very different style system. So we're a water-based product. So we kind of hit the sweet spots of elderly and children. So we're a very kid-friendly product because we're water-based. We don't sting. We have no harsh chemicals in the products. So it's safe to use on babies up to elderly. Whereas the spray-on competitors in the consumer side can't be because they're basically super glue and acetone and alcohol.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any other questions here? You can type them in the chat as well. And for those of us joining us on the live stream, I'm looking at the YouTube chat as well. So if you want to ask the companies a question, I'll be looking at that.
Hopefully you can't hear the pouring outside my house.
The bad.
Oh my gosh, it's storming bad.
We'll give it one more minute here for questions.
Sure. Yep, and you can find the products on Amazon, always selling. KeraCure Natural Seal or Tough Seal for our pet products.
I'm waiting to see a KeraCure commercial at like the Super Bowl or something like that. Yeah.
We did have one for the Buccaneers for a couple of years.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we were in their programming and the Tampa Bay Lightning. We were supported by all the local Tampa professional sports groups.
Awesome. Okay, it looks like there's no questions, so we'll move on here. Thank you very much, Carrie Ann.
Thank you.
All right, and now I'll bring in Dr. Peggy Samwin with Gene Capture. Is Peggy here?
I know what I'm selling.
Let's see. All right, Peggy, can you hear me all right? She should be joining us in a moment. Hey, Peggy, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Well, great to meet all of you today. I'm with a company called Gene Capture, and we have come up with a completely new platform to screen a human sample for 200 pathogens in less than an hour for $20 and to do it in an on-site basis. And that's what's really different about us. We are currently working with the Air Force and the Army and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and there's 2 Fortune 500 companies that are talking to us about strategic partnerships right now. Next slide, please. So the market is a $20 billion infection detection market. And what's really hobbling this market is that it takes on average 3 days to go from giving a sample to a doctor to getting back the results for what you have. And I think with COVID-19 on all of our minds right now, we all appreciate the delay that's happened and all the things that can go wrong. Wrong antibiotics, contagion, healthcare acquired infections. It's a big burden on the economy. Next slide, please. So our solution it's a real breakthrough. It's called RNA signature match. We've developed it completely. And this allows us to use without any enzymes or any refrigeration. It allows us to very ruggedly go and look for many pathogens at once, bacterial, viral, fungal, and to look for them quickly. So it's about a $20 billion TAM, about a $3.6 billion SAM. And next slide, please. It really impacts 3 important parts of the value chain: the payer, the provider, and the patient. So whether it's less cost or new revenue or a faster result, there's a big change. And next slide, please. What excites me about this market is that by being able to go inexpensive and portable, we're really enabling many new places where infection detection can happen. Clinics, doctors' offices, cruise ships, field hospitals, nursing homes, points of entry, etc. Next slide. So here's how it works. We have what I'm calling, well, I'll let you hear this video.
Gen has a unique genetic signature, and we've designed captors that seek out that signature, and when they find it and capture it, a fluorescent signal is activated. The image across the whole array identifies which pathogen has infected you.
So we call that array really almost like a bingo card of probes. We design these probes and they are aligned at a certain temperature and buffer to basically complement the RNA of the pathogen. So we've done some early preclinical validations with an earlier prototype. We had a 95% agreement with the culture lab where we provided results in 2 hours. The culture lab was 3.2 days. And that is the kind of level that you need to get to for point of care. So very impressive to be there already. And next slide, please. So in the last 5 years, we've brought in about $6 million, next please, in DoD contracts, SBRs 1 and 2s, and in investments, generally angel investments, and winning business plan competitions. And with those funds, next, we have filed 12 patents, several awarded. We've done a lot of clinical testing. I've been really careful to keep our team not stuck in the lab, but getting out. Several technical validations. We've met with the FDA. We are planning on an FDA clearance late 2021. And next, please, we've already got revenue because we've got these development contracts, but the revenue will really spike once that FDA clearance comes through. And last slide, please. So I was drawn to this as a CEO because it was just such a unique opportunity. I've done other startups before, but I think the fact that there's a recurring revenue model, this is what the product looks like. This is the magic. Recurring revenue model, our FDA path is identified. And even at this early stage, we've got good commercial strategic interest and a team that I've assembled I'm very proud of. Our chief scientist is a Harvard biochemist. Our chief engineer has had 30 years of experience bringing medical devices to market with companies like Philips and Abbott and Roche. So very good team, and we're excited about where we are.
Awesome pitch, Peggy. Thank you very much. So I'm going to launch the poll for that real quick, and we'll open up the floor to any questions. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question.
This is Charlie Patel. Just had a quick question just in terms of limit of detection and dynamic range.
Yes, that's a great question. So for many of the indications that we're looking at, urinary tract infection, upper respiratory, the limit of detection is around 1,000 to 10,000 CFU per sample. But with a little booster on it, we can get lower. So for example, we are designing a COVID probe right now for those lower amounts. And dynamic range generally up to 100,000 or more CFU. Since we're not amplifying anything, we are looking for every little fragment of RNA that we have out there. And that's really, that's our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. We're not amplifying, so we've got to find what's in the sample. But because we're not amplifying, we can keep the whole thing so simple.
And in terms of sample prep, any preparative method upstream of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. The sample prep is integrated into the cartridge. So this truly is sample in, answer out. So holding up this cartridge now, the sample actually goes right in this port and it is prepped through lysing and buffer and ultrasonic energy to fragment the RNA. And then that sample moves across over to the array. So we're truly sample in, answer out in less than an hour.
And sorry, I missed the source. Was this a buccal swab or saliva or blood?
Thanks. Another good question. Any fluid sample, so blood, saliva, swab, any fluid sample, we designed the cartridge to take in anything and then be able to lyse it from that point. And so one of the reasons that I'm giving you such universal answers is that, and I want to make a comment about what Dave Carden said earlier about timing. I really feel that the DoD market was ahead of the desire for this product before the commercial. COVID-19 has changed a lot in the world of diagnostics, but early on, it was the DoD that said, we need a product that we can bring to a level of care 2, which is basically a far forward field operation. And we need something with no sample prep, no cold chain, no amplification, very simple, light, and less than an hour. And that really helped us match our vision to a customer need. And that was just very helpful for the company early on.
All right, Oren.
From on the revenue model, could you just speak to who the purchaser is, and if it is a insurance reimbursement model, whether private or from CMS, could you just talk through how your device gets into that revenue model?
Sure. So it's a B2B market. so many doctors' offices are owned by hospitals. In a lot of ways, it's going to be hospital systems that will get interested in this. But we believe that the early launchers, the early market adopters are going to be the microbiology labs that are in what's called near patient facilities. That's where they are overwhelmed with samples coming in every night and want quick action. So that's a group that their decisions are made very technically by the lab directors. It's not a sales pitch as much as it is a technical pitch. And we think if that's the early adopters, then it will ripple out to the other areas. So we've had some informal discussions with insurance companies, and part of our reason for trying to keep that cost so low but still keep a good gross margin is to get that cost under the cost of a typical copay, so that we try to break that model of what needs to be reimbursed.
Awesome. We still have time for a few more questions. So if we want to get into some technical details or something like that, everyone feel free to ask.
Maybe one other question on 200 pathogens. Is that sort of theoretical, or do you actually have signatures of 200 explicit pathogens and clinical data?
That is a little bit of a random number. The real estate on the slide can handle up to 200 pathogens. We've designed 60 so far. We've done preclinical work on about 20. And we believe the first indication that we've talked to the FDA about would be for urinary tract infection. And that requires about 15 pathogens on a panel. And so we've done some testing on that. When we first met with the FDA and described in an informational meeting to them how this technology worked, they were very quick to say, we're going to need to receive it as indications. So one indication, then add 20 more pathogens, second indication, add more. So it will build up to 200. And there's about 180 pathogens make up about 80% of infections. So the 200 number is a good universal number to look at.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a super promising technology and much needed. Thank you very much, Peggy. Appreciate it. It was
Thank
awesome
you. Great
pitch.
to meet all of you.
All right, next up here we have Jesse Silverberg. Dr. Jesse Silverberg with Multi-Scale Systems. All right. Jesse, you there?
Yeah, just coming in now. Let's see if I got this here.
All right.
You hear
You
me?
have 4 minutes. Yep, you have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jesse Silverberg. I'm CEO and Research Director at Multi-Scale Systems. We are an advanced materials company, and our technology is lightweight, high-performing advanced materials. Next slide, please. So problem, what's the problem we're solving here? I think the bottom line is that it turns out that it's really hard, expensive, and slow to make new materials. And it doesn't take too long to convince yourself by noodling on the internet to see why it might be the case. And you see a lot of chemical engineering, you see a lot of the overhead and the costs, the false starts that end up leading to these cost drivers. And it ends up being really important because advanced materials have major impacts on all heavy industries. And so just to pick one example alone for lightweighting, it turns out that lightweighting materials in semi-trailer manufacturing, that one use case alone is a $1 billion domestic market. Next slide, please. So what is it that we're doing? Well, we have a way to make new materials faster, cheaper, and better. So in our case, the technology is called mechanical metamaterials. And the idea is that instead of creating new materials through chemical or molecular engineering, instead what we do is we design geometric patterns to enhance the strength and resilience of existing materials. Gunnar, do you mind hitting the next slide, please? I think there's some animation. There we go. And so basically this little schematic equation on the right shows the basic idea where you have your base material, there's a geometric pattern that we come up with, we combine those to create the mechanical metamaterial. And the combination of that pattern plus base material is where you get the ability to computationally design the material properties. So it's no accident that I picked on semi-trailer lightweighting as the example on the previous slide. Our sort of flagship product right now is Metacore LD. It's a lightweight panel structure that has improved durability. It's got low thermal conductivity, high impact absorption, and it's easily integrated into other systems. The beachhead market, of course, semi-trailer manufacturing. We like that one because there's about 200,000 new semi-trailers manufactured a year. There's about 5 customers for us. We've got signed MOUs from 2 of those customers, which means we've got about 25 to 35% market share in the bag with just 2 customers. As you can imagine, lightweight impact absorbing materials is definitely of interest for the DoD and defense market. But even beyond those 2, lightweight materials are also really transformative for electric vehicles. And so as we move towards a future for heavy industries, this type of product is going to have a lot of different applications. Next slide, please. How do we do it? What's our secret sauce? The short answer is a lot of math, a lot of physics, a lot of computation. On the left here, I'm showing you a little bit of the schematics that we use to sort of illustrate our workflow. It starts with some geometry. Again, things are designed computationally, optimized, and then we actually fabricate them, validate them, and we ensure that these things can be scaled and manufactured. In the DoD case, one of the use cases there is that they like honeycomb as an impact absorbing material for airdrops. Our product is 30x better and improves the operational envelope, but that's something that can be used outside the DoD context. If you like, you can think of us as like a 3M, a BASF, or given the audience, a Dow, but without the expensive and time-consuming chemistry. Next slide, please. So I say we, who are we? This is the team right here. Myself and Art, we're both PhD level physicists that started all this while we were in academia, a slew of papers while we were at Cornell, Harvard, the Wyss Institute, UMass Amherst. The last 2 years, we've grown the company, we've hired, we've brought in phase 1 and phase 2 SIBRs from NASA, NSF, DOE, a variety of other partners. We've got our IP protection and order, and we've done all this without equity. So I'm happy to take any questions you guys have and carry the conversation further.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Appreciate it. I'm going to launch the poll for that. And anyone who would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand or type it in the chat. Betsy, I apologize for missing your question. Any questions here? I think it's a super exciting technology. All right, Oren.
Just to plant some seeds for future ideas, the idea of using geometry to design materials is an old idea. It goes all the way back to cardboard. That's obviously still in use today. Aerospace picked up the idea about 60 years ago with honeycomb. And essentially, we are the next logical progression of that, where we're using 3-dimensional geometric forms in order to get the performance enhancements at the core of our technology.
So Jesse, what is your fundamental, I guess, IP moat as you look at going to either IP licensing or production of these materials?
So the IP is around the geometric design of these metamaterials themselves. And the way that our IP is phrased is that geometric designs, broadly speaking, that optimize for certain desirable or profitable characteristics are what we're protecting. That gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to optimize and refine geometries while still hitting the same high value performance metrics. We found that with our beachhead market and semi-trailer manufacturing, these 5 companies, some of them are vertically integrated, some of them are just looking for suppliers. From our perspective, we're happy to have customers. And so when they want to buy, we're happy to manufacture and sell. If they want to license, we're happy to turn over the reins.
Let me maybe restate that. Good answer to that question, but kind of corollary question. What is the fundamental pain point of the customer that you're trying to solve? Is it development of new materials? Is it cheaper development or cheaper production? Where's the sweet spot?
Sure. So again, sticking with the semi-trailer example, the weight of semi-trailers is regulated on the highways by federal and state agencies. And so for haulers that max out on their weight, they're losing money, essentially. So in our case, we can, by switching over from the current high density foam to our product, they reduce weight. And for a small fleet operator, the end user, that translates to about $1 million per year in increased bottom line profits. for our customers, who are the manufacturers of the semi-trailers, when there's such a small market and they're so close to one another in terms of market share, having lighter trailers becomes a differentiator for them. And so it's their internal competition that drives the ingestion of our technology, and it's the end users' bottom lines that drive the acceleration and ingestion of the technology.
All right, it looks like we have a question here from Sung Hoon Yang. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Yeah.
Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, the question I have is that the designing material itself, one, and then the other one is producing and then manufacturing. Is there any issue you have, including the yield problem, or in the mass production, if there is any issue in performance of the material?
Sorry, I gotta turn the volume up a little bit louder. Do you mind repeating the questions?
I think he was asking if there's a problem mass producing these materials, if they're so customized.
If mass production was the question, no. So one of the nice things about our design approach is that we can constrain geometries to be scalably manufactured with thermoforming, pressure forming, vacuum forming, injection molding, among other manufacturing processes. Of course, some of the people we work with are interested in additive manufacturing, and so we're happy to show those and provide those as use cases, but by no means is mass production a limitation for us.
Okay, looks like we have a question from Ed Greer. Ed, are you there?
Yeah, I was I think triple muted actually. That's a first. So what materials have you actually used, and what fabrication technologies have you actually used to date to make these?
So materials that we fabricated range from fiber pulp to polymers to fiber reinforced, thermoplastics. We've done metal. Let's see. In the metal category, aluminum, steel, and copper. And the thermoplastics, it's too long to list. In terms of manufacturing processes, we've done this everything from additive manufacturing, because it's easy and cheap, to laser cutting to milling. And actually our NASA SIPR phase 2 is going straight towards thermoforming. And our NSF phase 2 proposal, which is that looks at injection molding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you very much. So appreciate it, Jesse. We're gonna move on to the next pitch here with JD Stanley. JD, are you there? With IoT AI, pioneering the extreme edge.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I apologize, don't have video. I'm actually on a customer site on the defense side. And so I will give you an audio version of this. Next slide, please. So we have an amazing name of IoT AI. I laugh all the time. I was a close to 20-year person at Cisco. I have patents in AI. I worked networks. I worked all kinds of markets in the industry. So to come out of that and join my friend and co-founder and get both the domain of IoT.ai plus the name as a company IoT AI, it just always puts a smile on my face. Additionally, we have a black box. Now, as part of that black box, though, we do actually solve some extreme conditions. We do things in the past. We actually had pigs eat our sensors. We do things in metal-rich, really hard conditions. We are experts at that edge. And the good thing is that we're also experts at selling hardware and systems and software into really harsh, challenging conditions across different markets with our background. Next slide, please. Some of the problems that exist today is in the IoT space, it's a lot of hype. However, most customers are actually overspending a lot of times and not getting ROI. There's plenty of publishing documents on that, but that is because a couple of things. One, cyber threats. When you're at the extreme edge, it's really easy to tamper with legacy type sensors or new sensors. And people believe, oh, I'm going to solve that through a cloud AI system that detects that. And that's not always true, because there's ways to go around that. Additionally, when they buy a sensor system, typically it is a silo system with sub-optimized components, and it also carries a higher cost of ownership a lot of times. And there's tons and tons of legacy systems that need to be integrated. Inadequate connectivity. Majority of things work great when you have an enterprise network and you think you have 5G and 5G is going to solve it all. Reality is 5G is not going to solve it all. And many, many networks do not work in metal-rich environments, dense foliage, desert, high conditions where you need longer range, really rough, challenging situations. There's lots of things that just don't work adequately to make sure you're getting a good return. Additionally, edge AI. We live in a world where there's a high dependency of cloud for AI. And I know a lot of the VCs like to make money on that side. However, when you're at these extreme conditions, AI doesn't really work. VR and AR also don't work in extreme conditions when there's high interference, whether it be intentional jamming on the defense side, or whether it be metal-rich environments like a thermoelectric power plant, chemical plants, oil environments, those types of things. There's still a lot of manual data collection in the market. And so you're looking at two things from market side. One is the market we're targeting today. Additionally, I'm giving you where the future market is because of where we're going. And so next slide, please. So the secret sauce is this, is we really produce a modular system. So this modular system allows us to adapt to different use cases, but the fundamental capabilities in the system are very unique. They're unmatched. It is unmatched in cybersecurity. We actually have physical security well beyond anti-tamper, all the way up to the motherboard, the kernel, the software, the network. Additionally, the network self-forms, it self-heals. We scale to 10,000 nodes a day without repeater infrastructures, without backhaul, without satellite, without cellular, and we can scale that across multiple kilometers. What you also find is we've put AI into the mesh to give us multiple performance based on energy usage, performance, really intelligent stuff that allows us to scale this out to really harsh conditions, and also interoperate with other type of radio signals because we can route other radios through our system. We include edge compute, which is really nice for doing AI at the edge next closest to the sensor, allow field workers to access that system, including in disconnected environments where they cannot depend always on the cloud or the round trip. However, we also integrate into cloud AI and other kind of SaaS extensions. We actually are finalists in AFWorks for what's called multi-domain operations, JAD C2. And so we have a backend system that's called collaborate.org that scales to multiple millions of sensors, 2.5 million actually layers of geospatial layer. Lots of really good stuff as part of that. But it's a system. It's a modular system that solves maintenance issues, training issues, health exposure capabilities. We actually provide a better ROI for other AI systems because we give them more data. We actually give a better TCO because these things are plug and play, easy to use. We also lower the risk. Now, what's good about this, and the reason I mentioned the other market, is because we have a 2-pound system today. A battery operates for 36 hours. That's at full capacity of radio and AI processing. If you tune that down, it can last for years. We actually are doing today, we are demonstrating our Gen 4. It's less than 7 ounces. It is a symbiotic actually to the ATAC and other types of things, mobile devices. And I can't show you that today, but it's not disclosed. And additionally, from an investor perspective, we have non-dilutive funding, multiple millions of dollars, actually paying us to take all of our technology, which is a radio plus AI, all into a chip. We support over 4,000 sensors natively, and we can actually do other sensors within days to weeks. Next slide, please.
All right, Jesse, I think we're up on time here. We're a little bit over.
Okay, just real quick, we are experts at this, very senior people. If you end on the next slide, we can have questions over that one, Gunnar.
Sure, yeah.
Investor perspective, low risk, high potential.
Awesome, so sorry about cutting you off there, but we got to keep things rolling. Any questions here? I'll launch the poll as well. Ed, Catherine, anything?
I'm happy to shoot. So there's been a bunch of investment over years in different many type networks and pretty fractured market, it seems like, with some kind of more traditionally specific radio vendors getting into the mesh network game. It's not clear how much you are competing with those folks who are more kind of a soldier-to-soldier network or collaborating. Maybe you could just speak to the competitive market.
So we're kind of a next generation when you think about the Internet of Battlefield things and the things that will be in a battlefield bubble. There's more data in the bubble than there'll be outside the bubble. And so what we've done is we've merged the radio and the AI together, and there's no other radio vendor market today. You have to buy a separate compute system. You have to buy a separate radio. You actually have to buy typically different things to integrate sensors. And we do all that within less than a 2-pound box today. And then also we're putting that down to 7 ounces. And so what you find is that we are complementary to any other RF that's out there, whether it be the other radio vendors, traditional ones, especially in the defense side. We can interoperate with them, plug into them, or we actually provide a very resilient communication system that works within environments that they do not. And the good example is we work, actually, we have Emerson and Amazon who have been customers, and we work in a thermoelectric power plant for Emerson. And we go straight through the metal, up to the building, and over 20 miles away. Any other questions?
Yes, hello. Okay, I'm having trouble hearing you, Gunnar.
Hey, Lewis, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear
you. Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. I go to the first slide. My name is Lewis Ross. I'm the CEO of MEI Micro. We have developed the first tactical navigation grade MEMS inertial measurement unit technology platform. The question that we've been answering from the market, both on the commercial and the defense side, is having a high performance, low C swap inertial measurement unit using MEMS technology, which is the cheapest way to do it. And something that cannot be supplemented only by software. So there's been a lot of situations where GPS denied environments have increased, requiring a higher performing IMU in a lot of different markets. Consumer grade devices will never achieve the type of performance, and most of them are using very old process technology, and this is commercial process technology. There's no low cost, high performance IMU available now, especially in large volume for the aerospace or defense markets either. Autonomous navigation depends on a tactical navigation grade IMU to roll out production cars with higher level of autonomous vehicle capability. So there's a very high premium for the highest accuracy inertial sensor data coming from these sensors. So the sweet spot really is between $20 and $200 per unit, which would be competing with units that are anywhere from $5 to $20 to $50,000 in a much higher performance category. And we're talking about, again, navigation grade. MEI Micro's 3DS platform addresses those markets directly using MEMS technology for the first time. Next slide. The total addressable market for what we're doing, and this is a pretty large dual use market. In the consumer space, you're talking about right now anywhere from $13 to $13.5 billion. Those are consumer devices, anything inside smartphones to personal assistant, digital assistants, to Fitbit devices. There are tens of millions of them that are sold per company. On the high-end side, or high-grade side, we refer to as tactical navigation grade, the market's already close to $3.5 billion, and that's going to be growing significantly to nearly $5 billion by 2025. Now, these forecasts actually exclude the automotive market, autonomous vehicle market, which alone over the next 10 years will be approximately $21 billion. So these faster growth opportunities are expected even more so in new types of applications, which we plan to address with our device. Next slide. So the 3DS platform technologies, for the first time, a wafer level package device was developed at a commercial foundry. We developed our technology at the leading MEMS commercial foundry, actually in the world, the largest one. It was the first time to do a multi-axis device in one single chip, capable of doing 6 degrees of freedom, but also incorporating pressure, magnetometer, and acoustic sensors, forming a 10 DOF inertial navigation system, or chip scale INS is what we refer to it. So we have the lowest C-swap IMU available because of a large proof mass through chip vias that we develop through our IP and wafer level packaging in general. It's all silicon design, so it's very high G capable. It's already been tested at up to 14,000 Gs, just the bare chip alone. So that's why we've received so much attention from aerospace and defense. And we have 38 patents that are covering the pathway to get to tactical navigation grade, the only way to get there, because of the wafer level packaging and the large proof mass, which is 100 times larger than anything else on the market. We already have 7 core patents that have been issued in the US and Japan and Canada, and we have more that are going to be issued by the end of the year. So we see ourselves as pioneering this high performance, lowest cost swap MEMS IMU market. One other thing about the core technology here for AP&T systems, which is a big target for us and of course for aerospace and defense, as well as the commercial market, any autonomous vehicle, its core is the MEMS IMU and the GNSS. If you have the budget, you would include atomic clock, and that feeds into the other sensor fusion suite, which includes LiDAR, radar, and cameras. And the MEMS IMU also is critical for platform stabilization for those sensors. So it's the only sensor that enhances the other sensors. Next slide.
All right, Louis, you've got about 15 more seconds here. We're about a minute over time.
Next slide. Go to the final slide. We have a part of our IP includes a system chip. Actually, you go to the slide before. Our system chip, our IP includes a complete IoT system that could be used on a person or a tracking or for automotive. And this provides a complete platform to collect this data for machine learning, AI, to have a more accurate result. But essentially, we're offering a device that's $20 to $200 that could be scaled down to $10 per unit, replacing units that are $5 to $10 to $15,000. Last slide. So we have a lot of experience on our team. My colleague was the inventor of the DLP chip at Texas Instruments. That was the first DoD funded project, MEMS project, first actually in the world. I spent 25 years with MEMS startup companies in management. I've established companies in 4 different countries, received public funding in those countries, and also professional investment. I used to be in investment banking years ago as a equity strategist covering key emerging technologies in the industry.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Louis. We got to get rolling pretty soon here. Is there any quick, short questions? I know these technologies can get really complicated really quickly. All right, Catherine, go ahead.
Just want to congratulate you on, I've never seen a higher ratio of acronyms to words in all of my life. So I'm trying carefully to get them all. Curious, obviously from the venture perspective, to know more about the types of customers that you have that you think you can go deeper into on a financial basis, or customers that you aren't selling to now that you feel you could sell to in the near future.
Yeah, we're going to be individual per unit sales, but also OEM licensing. So we're talking to the automotive companies that are involved in autonomous vehicle supply chain, companies like Toyota, Denso. I'm currently in Japan now, and we're meeting with those companies. It's a dual use technology, so we're building the same unit for different customers, both on the defense side and the commercial side. So we're the first company that's offering the 6 DOF that can achieve navigation grade. So we received a lot of attention because of the price points that are necessary to put it in a production car, for example, when you're talking about an autonomous vehicle. As a former analyst, this is one of the reasons why I got involved years ago in MEMS technology, knowing that it was going to mature within the next 5 to 7 years. And in this particular case, developing this approach was a big breakthrough in the industry. That's why we received so much attention. Our patent portfolio covers the devices that we're making and we're selling. And we're going to be providing our first test samples to customers in a system and a package configuration in the fall of next year. Excuse me, in the spring of next year.
All right, Oren, go ahead for a quick question here.
Yeah, was the core IP internally developed or licensed? And if it was licensed, who from?
It was completely developed internally. We developed the the MEMS process technology, which is our core technology that includes the accelerometer, gyro, the different other types of MEMS that I went over, and importantly, the packaging. So the packaging, what we call 3DS, is enabled by our through-chip via technology. We were the first to do vertical and horizontal vias, and we developed that actually at the commercial foundry. So we've spent over $5.5 million. I have 28 angel investors. Half of them are from the financial industry. They're running private equity funds or hedge funds. And then we have some entrepreneurs that have also invested. But all our technology was internally developed. The company owns it outright, and we have no licenses.
All right, it looks like that's the last question here. We got to move on. Thank you very much, Lewis. I appreciate it. Lewis is in Japan right now. It's pretty early.
Thank you.
All right, next up here we have Rob Russell with Nova. Rob, are you there?
I'm here, buddy. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Excellent. Okay. So good afternoon, folks. I'm Rob Russell. For the next few minutes, I'm going to highlight our developments in ultra-wideband antenna technology. It's a solution that allows you to consolidate numerous antennas onto a single shared multifunctional aperture. All right, Gunnar, let's get right into it. So developing antennas is very often a trade-off between the design and operating parameters that you want. But arguably, if you could improve the frequency operating range of antennas, many of those problematic trade-offs could be resolved. And I think there's no better illustration than this, than the example of satellite communications, a very hard endeavor. SATCOM, like many other wireless operations, are conducted across a wide swath of the frequency bands, C to Ka and what have you. And service providers like SpaceX or Amazon operate on just a very narrow slice of these specific bands. And this is simply because antenna technology isn't sufficiently advanced to operate over the entirety or even a broad range of frequencies. So in short, they're just narrow band. And even state-of-the-art technologies provide a range of only about 10% of operating bandwidth. So consequently, antennas are used for single functions, and that's why you need multiple antennas for these numerous functions. So to this significant and unresolved narrow bandwidth problem, we have a solution. It's an ultra-wideband capability, which allows us to span an enormous and unprecedented range of frequencies. What's the value in this? So lots of antennas are expensive, and lots of antennas cause lots of problems. There we go, buddy. But with an ultra-wideband capability, able to operate over that wide range of frequencies, we can now consolidate their functions on a single aperture, a single antenna, decrease the number of antennas overall, work across those frequency bands and different constellations. And so by extension, we can also generate significant savings in dollars, increase the data rate, and mitigate a slew of other risks and issues. So all very good indeed. On the technology itself, we're looking at three primary components, and I'll just go sort of right to left very briefly. We've got the beamformer. This assists in detecting and directing signals through the antenna. Beamformers unto themselves are not new, although ours is hardware reduced to lessen the costs. The architecture itself, the antenna is software defined, and the architecture facilitates how the antenna is used with other devices. So it's analogous to enabling your cell phone to be so much more than just a phone, if you will. The antenna, we kind of discussed already. For the moment, I just add that the antenna is really an array of tiles, each containing hundreds of miniaturized antennas. So we can change the design based upon those tiles, those configurations of the tiles to conform to the platform itself. So collectively, these components comprise really what is a flat aperture of about, a foot by about 1 inch in height. Think of a dinner platform, if you will. Next slide, please. All right, in 10 seconds or less on us. We've been at the forefront of ultra-wideband antenna technology for a while. We've built prototypes that have ranged from UHF to millimeter wave frequencies. So we know what we speak of. And in doing so, we try very hard to engage industry leaders, to learn from them, or to look to collaborate with them in some way. So on the wrap up, I guess if there's a takeaway here, we're focused on getting to the market as soon as possible. We do have some housekeeping order on prototype. We've got to get our IP locked down, work on a few certifications, ITAR and what have you. But on the government side, we're getting pretty good validation, pretty good feedback from those that we're talking with, specifically the PEOs. So we've got good incentive to continue to accelerate the technology. Over on the commercial side, we would look to concurrent activities to accelerate the development, specifically within the market sectors of telecommunications, transportation, maritime, et cetera, et cetera. And the activities that we would like to see come into play over the course of the next 12 months, 18 months is all things collaborative, pilots, trials, and anything that could help assist in the overall testing and acceleration of the technology. So with that, I hope that was just 4 minutes, Gunnar.
Yep, you're good to go. Great timing. All right, do we have any questions here? I've just launched the poll, so VCs and CVCs, if you could please answer that. And Ed, go ahead.
So it seems like the innovation here is all in the antenna design and the architecture design. Are you using, is there any technology risk beyond that? Are you using any new materials or fabrication technology?
So we do have a little bit of secret sauce in the beamformer as well too. Our approach to that is to reduce the amount of phase shifters and a couple other components therein. So it does slip over into that area. On new materials, we generally try to default to COTS components, especially in the frequency agile architecture, and throughout. It is a primary focus to reduce costs, so that we can work on a differentiation that is high performance yet at reduced costs. That being said, perhaps in the next iteration, I guess, we will look at new materials, specifically with a means to continue to reduce the overall cost of the antenna systems.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Sure, any more questions here?
Well, thank you for your time, folks. I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Rob.
No worries, mate. Anytime.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right, next up here we have Matthew Mispin with Link Technologies, and I'll bring him up. All right, Matthew, are you there?
Can you see me?
Yep.
Should be able to.
All right,
great. Hi,
everyone.
everyone.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, 1 second. Putting my timer on. 1 moment. And here we go. So hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Misman, co-founder and head of business development at Link Technologies. And what we're doing is fundamentally changing how devices are connected. Next slide. Current networks are ill-suited to the challenges of the future. Most of them rely on infrastructure in some way. They're static. They suffer from security and privacy issues. They have high power consumption and they're inconsistent. for instance, you can look at some of the natural disasters that have happened in Puerto Rico, and many of the constituents and things of that nature were had no cell service. On the defense side, of people in the audience will understand the missing 10th Mountain Divisions being recovered, and our technology really could have helped there. Drone deliveries aren't where they need to be because the networks aren't able to support it. Ultra wideband type transmissions are too short range, and 5G really just won't have the range that many of the devices will require. And as many people know, Bluetooth is only a 400-meter range. Next slide. So Link's proprietary software and communication protocol is changing how devices are connected. We don't require any infrastructure or networks. It's fully decentralized. Our range is long. We have really, really high security. It's LPI and LPD with 256-bit encryption and with chirp spectrum frequency hopping. We're also use very low power, and from a reliability standpoint, it's very, very high with built-in redundancy. And effectively, our secret sauce is a decentralized, flexible, rapidly deployable network capable of communicating over miles with any device that leverages Link's technology in a manner that's uniquely difficult to intercept and detect. Next slide. So we've got proven technology with proven demand. Our technology was first implemented in our Smart Compass, which is a civilian technology for secure peer-to-peer location over miles without the need for phones, networks, or infrastructure. We did a $1.7 million Indiegogo campaign, sold 22,000 devices, shipped them all to North America. We're in the midst of shipping the rest of them to Europe. More recently, we've been maturing that civilian technology to mil-spec, as the very first pre-sale backer in that consumer campaign was actually an Army captain that wanted to use the devices for training and tracking his students throughout land navigation. And more recently, we've been developing our module and software that can embed our technology into anything from speaker mics to drones to smart warehousing applications. And eventually you won't need hardware at all, it'll just be software. So effectively, we have infinite scalable software that can be integrated into any device, which creates the foundation of an ecosystem connected by Link. Next slide. So again, we're expanding in the defense public sector market as well as into other radio accessories with our partner Otto. We've signed an initial deal which is worth 1.5 million. That deal scales to 17.7 million minimum paid to Link over the next 4 years. And that deal includes software licensing and integration into their speaker mics. They're the global leading manufacturer of speaker mics for two-way radios for the defense and public safety markets. And they were also leveraging them as a channel partner to sell our mil-spec device into their existing relationships. Next slide. We've raised over 10 million to date with reputable investors like FNBC and Sony, who led our last round. We're also a Techstars alumni, and also another investor in our company is Bill Ty, Richard Branson's fund. Bill Ty, as many people know, the first investor in Zoom. We just closed another round of commitments and are capitalized till 2020 and are positioned to execute on a roadmap and make the hires that we need to. Thanks for your time.
Awesome pitch, Matthew. Thank you very much. So I'll launch this poll here for Link Technologies. And if you have any questions, go ahead. Catherine.
Hey, Matthew, thanks for the pitch. Just wanted to touch back on the kind of challenges of the future that you described, I believe in slide 1. Each of those obviously seems is a multi-billion-dollar market, climate change, security, et cetera. What would you posit as kind of the top one of those that you feel like these devices could, we get the impression that these devices have extensive applications, but how would you kind of force rank the most plausible ones?
From a use case perspective, so I mean, the near term, sort of low hanging fruit is, our defense device, which can be used for all these industrial, public sector, public safety market stuff for location of, squad members. But ultimately, the long term large opportunity is integrating the underlying network that, our chipset and module into everything that needs to transmit any type of data in a rapidly deployable manner. My co-founder would say drones are the next big market that we would go into because it's growing so quickly. But my opinion is I think smart warehousing is a really, really strong place for us to look for, specialty wearables, for man down detection with personnel, and then also just transmitting data between robots as things become more and more autonomous. And then the things that we're doing today is just embedding it into other, radio equipment, like we're doing with Auto, who's the leading manufacturer of radio accessories to the defense and public safety markets. But I mean, what makes our technology really interesting is that it's very long range. You can set it up in seconds, and then it's really bleeding edge from a security standpoint. And detection. So I mean that's why the military sort of grabbed onto it so much. But even enterprise customers have the same sort of security concerns that government does as well.
And what's long range as compared to the Bluetooth example that you gave?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't clarify that in the 4-minute pitch. Up to 5 miles on the ground and 20 miles in the air.
And then lastly, I'm sorry, I'm dominating the questions here.
No.
With investors like Sony on your cap table, have you had any exclusivity with them or others, or any in the past or currently?
No, zero actually. It's from their innovation fund. So they're very, very separate, and by that nature, there is, so for the radio accessories market, for just for speaker mics, we have exclusivity with Auto, but they manufacture speaker mics for 7 out of 8 largest manufacturers in the world. So the only reason we gave them exclusivity is because they have the entire market. They have 80% of that market. Everywhere else, we will not sign any sort of exclusivity, and certainly not with Sony.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for the questions. Those were great.
Awesome. Any more questions here? Feel free to type them in the chat as well.
Yeah, my email's there at the last slide. If anyone wants to reach out, we do have a roundup, and we're taking commitments on. It's pretty much fully subscribed, but I mean, we are always interested in talking to people that are excited about what we're doing.
All right, if there's no more questions, I guess we'll just move on here. Thank you very much, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Gunnar. Thanks, everyone. Yep. Take care.
All right, next up we have Inductive Ventures. I'm going to bring in Andrew Wissing and Jeff Wissing. All right, let's see here. Hey, Andy, you there? Hey, Jeff, you there? One moment. Hey, Andy, can you hear me?
Hear you. Hear me?
Yep, sounds good. Jeff, you all good there?
Yep, I'm good.
Cool. So you guys have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right, we'll start the clock. Thank you. My name is Andy Wissing. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Inductive Ventures. Here with me today is Jeff Wissing. He's the CFO and co-founder as well. We're here to talk to you today about our magnetic braking technology. Next slide, please, Gunnar. So typical brakes, like you're in your car, use friction to stop the aircraft. They dissipate the energy via heat, and they don't recapture any of it, leading to high maintenance cost, wasted energy, and brakes that have to be replaced. We're here to present a solution that has a brake that never has to be replaced. Currently, there are 2 aircraft that land every second with Collins Aerospace brakes on board the aircraft. And Collins is a strategic partner of Inductive Ventures, and we're here to take over the braking industry. Next slide, please. The aerospace brake market as a whole is worth over $1.9 billion annually. When we visited Delta's headquarters in Atlanta, they were very interested in this technology. Why, you may ask? Well, just look at the top line item there. Currently, Delta spends about $100 million per year per brakes on their aircraft. That is just for Delta alone. They replace these brakes on their aircraft every 12 to 18 months at a cost of around $100,000 to $125,000 per brake. That does not include the associated logistics, personnel, or maintenance or downtime costs associated with that. And so $500,000 per plane per year adds up pretty quickly in the aerospace market. We've also done some research into other military aircraft, and you can kind of see the impact of those aircraft on the chart as well. Next slide, please, Gunnar. So what you see here is a titanium disc that's spinning at close to 150 miles an hour. When we activate our magnetic brakes, the titanium disc in less than 1 second. As you can see there, we have a pretty big air gap. There's no parts that are moving, or there's parts that are moving, but there's no parts that are touching, or there's no parts that wear out. And so this kind of gives you a big picture outlook of how magnetic braking technology works. Our technology is scalable. It's able to fit on multiple aircraft platforms. It's weight neutral, the most torque for the least amount of weight. It also provides the opportunity for electric taxi and takeoff assist when we use our active magnetic braking systems on these aircraft platforms. Next slide, please, Gunnar. We've patented both the active and passive brake technologies. We have development activities ongoing for the A320, the U-2 aircraft platform, as well as the F-18 aircraft platform. We have future programs centered around the CH-47. We're looking at drones for closed loop energy recovery systems where they store energy when they land, and then they can use that energy either on takeoff or for weapon systems. And we're also working with Hyperloop to design a braking system for their vehicles as they look to roll out their system worldwide. We're also looking to expand our patent portfolio internationally. All our patents are US based, but we're interested in exploring larger patent portfolio. Next slide, please, Gunnar. And so here at Deductive Ventures, we're looking for an injection of cash flow to grow the company, expedite testing, and develop new magnetic brake systems for new market applications. We believe there are several other opportunities for deploying this magnetic braking technology in other markets. We think the technology is scalable and can be used in elevators, trains, cranes, and other heavy industry equipment where friction brakes are currently used. These are some of our partners and team members that we're looking to deploy the technology with. And we're working with current brake suppliers like Collins Aerospace and Meggitt, and we're also working with airframe integrators like Lockheed Martin to deploy this technology. We believe that we've invented the holy grail of brakes, a brake that never wears out. Thank you.
All right, Andy and Jeff, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Looks like Catherine and Oren both have a question. Catherine, go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, great presentation, very clear. The Delta financial example especially was illuminating. Apologies, I haven't looked at this technology before. Are magnetic brakes currently used in practice by any of the major carriers?
No, and it is not used in the aerospace and air industry at all. They are currently using friction and carbon-based braking systems. This is a new and emerging technology that we have developed.
And why do you think they haven't started using it?
I think that weight has been a problem with them previously. We've developed some new materials, and we've done some interesting science around getting rid of the heat in the brake systems. All the energy has to go somewhere, and so we've come up with some clever ways with working with Oak Ridge and working with some heat pipe manufacturers to get the heat out of the brake into other parts of the aircraft.
And then just with respect to supply chain, do you have concerns if you were to get a huge order that you'd be able to generate the necessary magnetic material?
No, not necessarily. We've partnered with a group out of San Marcos, Texas called Urban Mining. They are a domestic supplier of magnets. As you may or may not know, most of the magnet material comes from China. Yep. But now that there is a domestic supplier that we are partnered with, we feel like we can get all the magnetic material that we need to make our braking systems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question, Catherine. Oren, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, excellent. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. So just knowing very little, but imagining aircraft certification is a pretty long road. Do you have a sense of, let's just keep going with the Delta example, like what it will take and who the actual end customer for that, both I guess FAA certification, but also, is this a sale to Boeing and Airbus or to Delta? What's the sales cycle for this if you were technically successful?
We're actually pursuing 3 different paths. One is the airframe manufacturer like the Lockheed or the Boeing, who needs to specify that we want these brakes on our aircraft. That's kind of one road that we're pursuing. The second road is our partnerships with Collins Aerospace and Meggitt. They're the actual brake manufacturers now. They're selling the carbon brakes. Collins is a strategic partner of ours. They have offered, lots of engineering testing and services on our behalf. And so partnering with them would be another opportunity where they could take this technology and either license it or just purchase the IP outright and use the technology on board the aircraft. And then the third road is through the military. They're kind of like the major, the Lockheeds or the Boeings, but they're a little bit different in that they have kind of a little bit more, say in the specification development as they're developing the mil specs and all that stuff. And so we're kind of pursuing this 3 ways to make sure that we don't miss something that would otherwise be obvious.
So it just a quick follow up. If Boeing was just all in on the product, how many years would it take to get the product flight certified for its first flight on a commercial flight?
If Boeing was all in on the product and if they told Collins that they had to have this on the next plane, or Collins couldn't have the contract, I think they could be anywhere from 12 to 18 months from being on the aircraft.
Our initial prototype design, which you can see video of on our website, is all FAA, meets all the FAA requirements, and it was tested at Collins Aerospace for the A320.
Awesome. Any last questions before we wrap things up here? Got the People's Choice coming up. We're going to ask all the YouTube viewers to vote and see who their favorite company was, and see how their answers compare to our VCs and CVCs here. All right, then. Well, thank you very much, Andy, and thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. This is awesome.
Thanks, Gunnar. Thanks for driving the show.
Cool. All right, so we have a bunch of people on YouTube here watching. So the average person's been watching for easily over an hour now, so they've seen all these pitches. If you want to take your phone and just get out your camera and just scan that little QR code there, it'll bring you to a very short form. It's got like 2 questions on it, and all you have to do is pick the company that you would be most likely to invest in. And I'm also going to do the same for all the representatives we have here. And while we wait for those answers to come in, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Will Dixon here. Will, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Will.
Great. So huge thanks to Gunnar, to Paula, to everyone for this day. Really pumped to have mostly continuous viewership and participation here. I know it's tough getting, especially some in the middle there got pretty technical. And Catherine, I appreciated your comment about the acronyms. But yeah, so it's kind of, dealing with the trade of real tough tech startups. And that's where we're here to help. So again, just a huge thanks to everyone who participated. I thought the panel discussions were great. And again, from our perspective at FedTech, let us know if you want to be a part of it. We're happy to involve anybody from the venture capital world, even just interested viewer. We have opportunities as mentors, program participants, everything in between. We see ourselves right in the middle of this deep tech ecosystem, 1 foot using the US government as a partner for a lot of these companies, 1 foot looking at venture capital in commercial applications. So I think that's about it from my end. I'll kind of hand it back to Gunnar here to close us out with some of the poll. I think we're just going to show the final poll results, right, Gunnar?
Yeah, I think I'll share the final poll results here.
Drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll. So this will be the VC answer, and they've been able to select individual companies. All right, it looks like we have Inductive Ventures in the lead with 4 votes, and we have Vida Inclinata and then Bounce Imaging. And based on our public People's Choice vote, let me refresh here. Oh, okay, this is a little rough. We have a 3-way tie on the People's Choice. I'm not going to say the companies yet, but if someone wants to submit that last poll, you will. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. The People's Choice, they say Inductive Ventures. And, oh, okay. Hold on. There's a Vida Inclinata now. So it's a tie between Vida Inclinata and Inductive Ventures. Future Vertical Lift really taking off here, if you know what I mean. So we have 3
Awesome.
for Vita, 3 for inductive, 2 for bounce, 2 for gene capture. Personally, I'm on the gene capture boat. I'm from a biotech background.
Awesome.
I was really expecting just like a, I mean, I don't know what I expected. They're all amazing technologies. So
They
all right, well,
are.
thank you very much
It's
to all the
hard to choose
companies.
favorites.
All right, well,
Also,
thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time here. I know it's kind of been a long day, but all the companies, all the VC and CVCs, all the team, everyone that helped, we really appreciate it. And we'll put the recordings of these pitches online for anyone. And if you want to, I'll leave the screen up for a bit here. If you want to get in touch with any of these companies, go ahead and scan this QR code and I can arrange one-on-ones between you and the companies.
Yeah, and I'll just foot stomp that one last time forever, especially any of the venture folks out there, people who can provide feedback. I think the more and more as kind of leading the accelerator, we try to push all these companies into as many diverse communities as possible to get different types of feedback. So every one of them is willing to follow up with the 15-30-minute call, even if there's no general short-term thing. Definitely appreciate any and all participation. And please just scan the QR code and work through myself and Gunnar on that one.
Awesome. I'll leave this up for a few minutes for the rest of our public audience here, but appreciate it. Thanks, Paula. Paula got everyone on board today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all for coming.